Hi, so this is a tutorial on how to build a VRChat world from start to finish. I'm going to be using Blender to build the base of the world, and then I'm going to be bringing it over into Unity to get it ready, fill it with furniture, and to get it ready to upload to VRChat. I'm going to assume that you know nothing, and I'm gonna so this tutorial is not is gonna go into in depth on any specific type of concept or anything. I'm basically just going to tell you what you need to do and show you how to do it. I'm going to assume, like I said, that you know nothing and you've never opened up these programs. So hopefully it will be easy to follow along. Everything that I'm going to be doing is not going to be like too high concept or anything. We will be using Blender. I do 100% recommend that you learn Blender if you want to build worlds, because Blender gives you so many tools and it's not as hard as you think. Everything I do in this video is going to be like every tool I use in the video will be linked below. 90% of the stuff I'm going to be using are going to be my own assets that I made, so you'll have access to everything that I do below, and you'll also have access to the world that you're seeing on screen. I don't know what you're looking at because I haven't built it yet, but that full world will also be available to download if you just want to like skip this whole thing and take what I made. So yeah, let's get started, and we're gonna start with Blender. So before I begin, I just want to make it clear that most of the stuff I'm going to be doing here is not specific to VRChat. So YouTubing a video about how to model in Blender, or YouTubing something on how to do something in Unity is all going to be beneficial for you. And the main purpose of this video is to kind of show you the process on how to go from having nothing to having a fully functioning world. So we're going to start by opening Blender. I'm using Blender 2.93. I recommend using whatever is the newest. So to begin with, I'm going to click off of this and just hit here. Now this is a brand new project. You don't have to do this. I'm going to turn on my screencast so that you can actually see everything that I'm doing. There you go. You can see I have a mouse here, and any button I press, you should be able to see down here. So some basic Blender controls is if you hit the scroll wheel and you press the button, you can pivot around a single point. If you hold shift and press the middle scroll wheel, you can drag your scene around. One button that I think is really important that nobody ever talks about is the delete button on your number pad. Allows you to make an object the center point of your camera, so if you ever get lost in your scene, you can just press the delete key on your number pad, which is also the period, and it'll just direct your camera to a certain object in your scene, and I think that's really helpful for navigating Blender. And then using your scroll, you can go in and out like this. But that's the main basics. Right now we're in this new Blender project. I'm going to press A and then X to delete everything. And then I'm going to save this, and then I already have a file saved that I'm just going to save on top of it. It's called tutorial start to finish. You can name yours whatever you like, so I'm going to save that. The first thing I like to do is bring in a cube by pressing Shift A, and I get this menu here. I'm going to press Mesh, and then I'm going to go to Cube. I'm going to press that number pad period key again to zoom in on it. We need an object in our scene to show us the scale of the scene so that we're not building too big or too small. I like to just use a cube. Some people bring in like a character model or something. I just like to use a cube. 6 feet is about 1.8 meters, so I like to kind of make this human height. I'll go over to Item, and then I'll do 0.2, 0.2, and 1.8. And then I have this. And I'm going to press G, and then I'm going to press Z. G is to move. I'm pressing Z to lock it to the Z axis, and I'm going to bring it up so that it's near where our floor is going to be. So yeah, so this is like my makeshift human model to give me scale. So this is roughly the height of a human. I'm going to be bringing in another model. This will be linked below. So the goal for what I'm going to be building in here is basically just the base model of the world. So that's going to be like the walls, the floors, and things like that. I'm going to bring in a sofa that I'm going to be using in Unity to put in the world. And I want the sofa also in Blender, just so that I have an idea of how big my furniture is and how big this room needs to be. So I'm going to, this is linked below. I'm going to bring in an FPX, and I have it saved in my assets folder. And it's called Couch 2, and I'm going to import that. And that's this couch. So like I said, this is going to be part of the zip file that's linked below. There's lots of places you can get assets. So one place to get assets is Booth. This is popular for VRChat assets. If you type in like furniture or something, you can find things here. You can also find 3D assets on Sketchfab. This is my Sketchfab page, so you can see that I have a bunch of stuff on here for free. And if you just search models and things, or whatever you're looking for, you can usually find some things that you can download and use in your world. And so I just imported an FBX file into Blender, which is that couch. And so now it's here. So now I have a mesh that kind of represents my like a person in the scene, and then I have the sofa. And this sofa is going to be something that I'm going to be using in Unity as well. So yeah, let's get started in building this environment. I don't have like a formal plan on what this is going to look like, but basically I figured I'd build like a small room. I'll probably put some stairs in it, build some walls, and a couple windows. And I want the room to be big enough to have this couch in it, so I'm going to start by bringing in a plane. So I'm going to press Shift A again to get this menu up. I'm going to go to Mesh, and then I'm going to press Plane. And now I have a plane in the scene. It's being brought in on this cursor here, as you can see. If I move this cursor by pressing Shift and then right button on my mouse, it moves this little object around. So if I press Shift, right click again, and it's over there, and now it's over there. And then if I press Shift A to bring up this menu again and press Mesh and Plane, now it's spawning it over here. And so that's what that does. We're going to stick with this one though. Now I want to edit this plane because I want it to be bigger. To do that, I can scale it here, but this will mess up like UVs and stuff. So I'm going to Control Z to do that. To change this, I'm actually going to go up here. I'm going to go to Object and press Edit Mode. You can also do this by pressing Tab. So now I'm in Edit Mode. Object Mode, Edit Mode. And now in Edit Mode, I can change this mesh on however I want to. So we're just going to make this the size of the floor that I want in this room. So I'm going to press Shift Z. Shift Z gives me this wireframe look, and that way I can see like where my vertices are. If you look up here in the top left, you can see my mouse and there's like this dotted square around it. That means when I click and drag, it's going to create a box like that. If I press W, I can actually change what the select mode is. Now it's like the circle, so it'll select everything that's in that circle. If I press W again, now it's like this line thing. If I press circle again, or W again, now it turns into just crosshairs, which means I can just pick something. It just means I can pick something and move it without doing anything. My favorite is this little curvy dotted line, which means I can just drag around and choose anything. So we're in edit mode and we have this plane selected, and I want to select these vertices. The reason why I see these vertices is because I'm on vertice select mode. If I wanted to select edges, I could click edge select mode, and then it's letting me select these edges. If I wanted the whole face, I can go to face select mode, and then I can just grab the face and I get everything. For this, I want to be in the vertices select mode first, and then I'm gonna drag my mouse and I'm gonna select these two vertices. Now I want to move this, so I press G for move, and then I'm gonna lock it in the X axis, which is this red axis, and I'm just gonna move it over there. I'm gonna press Shift Z again to go back to this viewport shading, so that way we're not in wireframe mode anymore. You'll see me switch through wireframe mode and then the solid view over and over again, and that's just because I like to be able to see what I'm selecting. And so for this, I'm basically just gonna be taking this plane and I'm gonna be making it the size that I want it to be, and I'm gonna do that by selecting the vertices I want and then moving them in the direction that I want. So G allows me to move an object. So if I press G, I can move an object. By pressing Y, X, or Z, I can lock it to any one of the axes. If I press Shift and then one of the axes, so I just press Shift Z there, and that locks it to the other two axes. So I told it to ignore the Z axis, but lock it to the other ones. And so now I can move this on the X and Y plane. So I'm just going to be using G and then one of the axes, X or Y, to move it in the direction that I want. So I've got these two select and press G, Y to lock to the Y axis. I'm going to bring it out just a little bit further than what that is. And then I'm going to grab these, G, X. I'm going to move it out to something like that. And then I'm going to select these, G, Y. And this might be the size I'm going for. I'm going to show you a really cool tool in Blender that I did not know about for the longest time. If you press F3, you can search for things in Blender, and I'm going to search walking or walk navigation. This tool lets you walk around in your Blender scene using WASD, and it'll have your character collide. So now I'm actually walking in the scene as if I was a player in the game. I like to use this tool a lot because it lets me see the scale of all my meshes a bit better, and you can see that, kind of get an idea of how big this couch is. So if I press the right mouse button, I can click out of it. And I also want to see how high off this couch is from the floor. It's pretty good, actually. I'm just going to keep that like that is. So this is basically the size of the room that I want. I think I'm going to build stairs here, and I'm going to have it so players spawn over here, and then they can walk down the stairs to over here. So I'm actually going to go back into edit mode by pressing tab, and I'm going to go into edge select and select this edge. I'm going to press G to move, and then I'm going to lock it to the Y axis. I'm going to bring it out just a bit more. Cool. So I'm in edit mode, and I have this plane selected, and I actually want to move this cursor to be the center of this edge. So I have the edge selected. If I press Shift S, I can get this menu, and I'm going to press cursor to selected. So it's going to move this cursor where objects get spawned in at to whatever I have selected, and I have two vertices selected, and which makes the whole edge, and that's going to put the cursor right in the middle of this edge. So I'm going to do that, and now my cursor is there. I'm going to go back into object mode to bring in a new object. I'm going to bring in another plane. So now I want to make stairs. The way we do that, we're going to shape this to be the size of one stair, and then we're going to be using a modifier to add more of them. So let's go into edit mode. I'm going to scale this now by pressing S. S is the shortcut to scale. I'm going to lock it to the Y axis, and then I'm going to bring it in, and this is just going to scale it in the Y axis, and it's going to make it a lot smaller. I'm going to press that period on the number pad to zoom into this object. So now my camera is rotating around this object. I'm going to press G to move, and I'm going to lock it in the Z axis, and I'm going to bring it up a bit. I'm in face select mode. I'm switching through these. If you look, you can see I'm switching through these by pressing 1, 2, 3. 1 correlates with vertices, 2 correlates with edge, and 3 correlates with faces. You'll see me switch through them a lot, and I'll probably forget to say that I'm doing it. So right now I'm in face select mode. I select this whole thing. I'm going to scale this again, and I'm going to lock it in the X axis this time. I'm going to bring it all the way out to the edges here. Now I want to make sure that this is the length of this, and to do that I can press 7 on the number pad, and I can get a top-down view of what this looks like. But it's not quite there yet. I'm going to press S to scale it again in the X-axis, and I'm going to bring it just maybe just a little bit further out too, which will be okay because I'm going to put walls up, and it's probably going to cut through that. So awesome. So let's press F3 again, and since we had search for walking, the walk navigation, it is up there still now, so I'm going to click that. And now I'm walking in the scene, and I just want to get an idea for how tall this step is. I think it can be a bit taller, so I'm still in edit mode. I'm gonna press G, and then I'm gonna lock it to the Z axis and bring it up just a little bit more, and that should be good. So now this is gonna be the top part of the step. I'm going to give this some thickness by pressing E. E is extrude. And so if I press E, and I can now bring this up and extrude it a little bit, and that looks good. Now I'm gonna, in edit mode, with the face select, I'm gonna select the bottom face here, and I'm gonna press Shift D, and Shift D will duplicate whatever I have selected. So if I press Shift D, and then I'm gonna press Z. Right now I press Shift D, and it duplicated the object, and now I have a new face here that I can move around. I'm going to press Z to lock it to the Z axis, and I'm going to move it this way. Now I want to rotate this face so that it can be like the bottom part of the step here. So if I press R, which is the rotate tool, it's the shortcut for rotate. I'm going to press X to lock it to the X axis. And then I'm going to press Control. I'm going to hold it down, and this is going to lock it to, it's going to make it snap. I think by default it's 15 degrees. And I'm going to rotate it all the way until it's flat. And I'm going to press G to move it again, lock it to the Z axis, bring it down. I'm going to press 2 to get the edge select. I'm going to select this edge down here, press G to move, Z to lock it to the Z axis. I'm going to bring it up just a little bit. I'm going to press 3 to go to the face select this face, press G to move, lock it to the Y axis, and I'm going to bring it maybe somewhere around here. Maybe some more that way. Cool. So now we almost have our first step. Seems a bit high, actually. Before we test out if this is what we want, actually we'll just leave it like that for now. Staying in edit mode, I'm going to press 2 to go to edge select, and I'm going to select this edge here, and I'm just going to give this a bit more detail. I'm going to press Control B. Now Control B gives me access to the bevel tool, and if I use my scroll wheel to scroll, it will let me add more edges to this bevel. So I'm gonna do like 2 or 3 faces for the bevel, and I'm gonna do something like that. And now we have our step. So like I just said, it looks a bit tall, so I'm gonna press F3 again, go back to that walk navigation. Now I'm walking around the scene, and it actually feels like this might be a bit thin. I'm just gonna play around with this, make it the size that I want. I think I'm going to select this in object mode, go press tab to go back to edit mode. I'm gonna press 1 to go to vertices select. I'm gonna press Shift Z to go to the wireframe, and then I'm gonna select all these vertices. I'm gonna bring it down just a little bit. I'm gonna go back to solid view by pressing Shift Z. Then I'm gonna press 3 to go to face select. Then I'm gonna select this face, press G to move, Y to lock to the Y axis, and maybe something like that will work. I think that looks a lot better. So now I want more of these. To do that, I'm going to go to this option here, and I'm going to press add modifier, and then I'm going to add the array modifier. So the array modifier basically just duplicates whatever object that it's on, and you can use these tools here to move the objects to where you want. So this is moving it a total of 1 object. I guess you could say it's copying your object, and it's moving it completely over 1 iteration of that object over in the x-axis, but I want it to do that in the y-axis. So I'm just going to turn that to 0 and add 1 to here. And now I want it to go up as well. So you can see we have this space here now, and that's because it's moving it a total of 1 iteration of this length right over. So we need to bring it actually just a little bit further back. So instead of doing an iteration of 1, I'll do like 0.8. Oh, need to do it in the y-axis. So maybe like 0.8. That might be a bit too much. Maybe 0.95, 0.92, 0.9, 0.85. That works. So I'm going to press F3 and go back to this walk animation and look to see if I like kind of how that's looking. And I do like it. And so I want more than just 1 of those or 2 of those. And so I'm just going to press this. 3 actually seems fine for what is in my head. So now I'm going to go back. I have this object selected. I'm going to go back into edit mode, and I want to change this a bit. I don't need the edges here because I'm going to put walls up. So I'm actually going to select both these sides in the face select mode, or with the face select tool. I'm going to select this back part too. I'm going to press X, so this is X is to delete, and I'm going to choose to delete faces. And so now those faces are gone because we don't need them. Now we have stairs. So I want to make a floor up here as well, but I can't. I want to make it as an extension of this top stair, but I can't edit this top stairs because it's part of the modifier. Any changes I do to the mesh that is in the modifier is going to be added to all the objects that are being created by the modifier. So to be able to edit this whole object, I need to apply this modifier. And so that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to go here. You can apply a modifier by taking your mouse, putting it over the modifier, pressing Control A, or you can hit this bottom button and press apply. And so now this whole thing is something I can edit, and it's its own mesh. I'm going to select this object. I'm in object mode. I'm going to select this, press tab to go to edit mode. I'm already on the edge select tool. I'm going to select this edge. I'm going to press G to move, and then I'm going to press Y to lock it to the Y axis, and I'm just going to move it out to something like that. Make sure you save often. I'm going to press F3, walk navigation, and I'm just going to kind of take a look and see how I like this, and I like it a lot. Cool. I'm going to press Shift, right click to move my cursor, and I'm going to bring in another plane. And so now we are going to be making what will be the walls. So I have this plane. I'm in object mode. I have the plane selected. I'm just going to rotate this by pressing R to rotate, and then lock it to the Y axis. And I'm going to hold Control to snap it to the 15-degree angle. And I'm just going to do that enough until it's facing straight up. I'm going to press G to move the object, and then I'm going to press Z to lock it to the Z axis, and then I'm going to just drag it up. And now it's good. Now I'm going to press G, I'm going to press Shift Z, that way it locks it to the X and Y axis, and I'm just going to kind of move it over here for now. And then I'm going to press Tab, and now we're going to go into edit mode, press 2 for edge select. I'm going to select this edge, G to move, Y to lock it to the Y axis, and I'm just going to make this the length of this entire environment, G, Y. Select this edge, GZ, gonna bring it up just a little bit more. I'm going back into object mode, pressing F3, walk navigation. If you're using the walk navigation but it's not letting you walk around like this, press tab. That will actually switch it between fly mode and walk mode. I'm seeing that my screencast is not working when I'm in walk navigation, but that's fine. I'm just kind of checking the height of this wall to see if I like it. And I think it is fine. I'm going to bring it up just a little bit more. So I'm going to go in edit mode, select the top edge, press GZ, and that should be good. Now I'm just going to make it the entire length of the room. So I'm going to press E to extrude, and then X to lock it to this axis, and then I'm going to press E to extrude again, Y to lock it to the Y axis, bring it all the way down here. For this one, I'm going to select this edge, and then I'm going to select this edge, and then I'm going to press F, and that's going to fill and put a mesh between both these edges. Now this looks like it's pretty straight. So it's like really close actually. I did not mean to do that. That is crazy. I just randomly moved this edge all the way over here and it just happened to line up exactly with that. That is insane. Okay, but usually that doesn't happen. And so there's a trick to getting, so like if you pulled this off and it looked like something like that, there's actually a trick to make this straight. So if you press, I'm going to press 3 to go to face select, and I'm going to select this whole face. Then I'm going to scale it. And so now it's being scaled, and I'm going to scale it in the Y-axis. So this can only scale in and out on the Y-axis. Now if I press 0, it's going to, both those edges are going to scale to the same spot in the Y-axis. So they actually end up becoming perfectly straight. And then I'm going to move this back to like be on our plane, which is the floor, and I'm press G to move, lock in the Y-axis, and move it right there. Sweet. So now we have a room with walls. We're doing so good. I'm going to press F3, walk navigation, and walk around here. Yep, that's a room. So I was thinking on ways to make this a bit more interesting, and so it's just not like a cube room. And what I came up with was to add like an angled wall going to the ceiling, and we actually might make this. Let's actually select this object, go into edit mode. I want to select all these edges at the top, and to do that easily, I'm going to show you a trick. If you hold Alt, Shift, and then press the edges, it's going to like wrap around that edge loop, which this edge loop just happens to be the top here. So now I have all these top edges selected. I'm going to press G and then Z to lock into the Z axis and move it up just a bit more. While still in edit mode, I'm going to bring in another object. So when you bring in an object while you're still in edit mode, it becomes part of this object. I'm going to press Shift. Actually, I'm gonna press 3 to go to face mode. I'm gonna select this face. I'm gonna press Shift S to get this menu up again. I'm gonna bring the cursor to selected. So now the cursor is in the center of this face I had selected. And then I'm gonna press Shift A to bring up that menu. But this time this menu is showing up in the edit mode. So it looks a bit different, but basically it's the same thing. I can add in a mesh here, and I'm gonna bring in another plane. So now I have two meshes in edit mode that I can manipulate, and what happens is when you go back to edit mode, this all becomes one mesh. So you can't separate them in edit mode, and when you like export this to Unity, it's all going to be like one object. So that's why you try to keep things separate in edit mode versus, that's why you want to keep things separate. But we want this on there because it's basically going to be part of the wall. So I'm going to go back into edit mode. I'm going to select this mesh, this plane, by selecting the face of it. I'm going to press G to move it, Y to lock it to the Y axis, R to rotate, X to lock it to the X axis. I'm going to hold Control, and I'm just going to rotate this to an angle that I like. I'm actually going to go Shift Z to go into wireframe mode. I'm going to press 1 on the number pad. I take that back and press 3 on the number pad to get a side view of the scene. And that way I can kind of get a better idea for how angled this is. I'm going to press G to move it. And when you're in a viewing mode like this, it's going to automatically lock it to the two axes you can see. So I can see the Z and the Y axis, and that's what it's locking it to, so I don't have to lock it to any axis. I'm just gonna move this in a spot that I like. I'm gonna press 1 to go to vertices select, and I'm gonna just grab both these vertices here. You can see that I have both those selected, and then I'm just gonna bring this over to like right here. And now I'm gonna press 3 to go into face select this whole face, press S to scale, X to lock in the X axis, and I'm just going to scale it out like that. And sweet, now we have this thing, which is kind of interesting. And now I want the same thing on this side. Now I want it to be exactly how it is on this side, and to do that we can just mirror the object, which is, well, actually we can't because it's a part of this whole wall. It would mirror the whole thing. Never mind. Well, I do want to mirror it. So since I want to mirror just this, and it's right now this part is a part of this whole thing, which actually kind of screws us up if we want to mirror just this object. So to separate them, I can actually go into edit mode, select the part that I want to separate, press P, and then press by selection. And now if I go to object mode, these are now two separate objects. And I want to mirror this object onto the other side of the room. And to do that, I need to use a modifier. So if I select the object that I want, go to this wrench again, add modifier, and instead of array, last time we used array, now we want to use mirror. So let's mirror this object, and now it is mirroring it over the x-axis. We actually want it to mirror on this side, so I'm going to turn this off and press Y, and now it is over here. Now it's way over here. Basically what it mirrors off of by default is where the origin of the object is. So initially this object was this object, and we brought it in right here when the cursor was there. So that's where the origin of the object is. And because we brought this face in while in edit mode on this object, it kept that same origin of the mesh. So what we can do is we can change where the origin of the mesh is, or we can tell Blender to mirror this object based on another object, and that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna press Shift right click to bring my cursor to roughly the center of this room, which is not where it's at, but that's fine. I'm going to press Shift A to bring in a new object, and I'm going to bring in an empty. So this object, this is nothing in the scene. It's just an object to be there to reference with the objects. So I'm going to go back to this plane that I want. I'm going to press Mirror Object, and I'm going to press this little eyedropper, and I'm going to choose that empty object. And now the mesh is mirroring this empty object. Now if I select this empty object in object mode, I can press G to move it, and now the mesh reacts to where I move this. I'm going to lock it to the y-axis. I'm just going to bring this over here. I'm going to press 3 again and go into wireframe mode by pressing Shift Z. And I'm just going to move this object somewhere to where it makes sense. Now, there's quite an incline over here, and I don't want this to like cut off. Like if there was a door over here, the way this works wouldn't really make any sense, which is fine. So let's find that empty again. I'm just gonna bring it and make it something like that, and I'm gonna go back to the shaded mode, and so now it looks like that, which is also still interesting. So neat. And I'm gonna keep it like that. That's probably fine. I'm going to select this object, and I'm going to press Control A with my mouse hovering over the modifier to apply that modifier. Now we have that. So I'm going to go into edit mode on this part. I'm going to go into edge select. I'm going to select this edge, and it doesn't really make sense that this is over here. So I want to move this edge to like up here where it's closer to the wall. And to do that, if I just press G to move and like one of the axes, it's going to change the angle of that shape, right? So to do this, I'm going to press the edge that I want. I'm going to double click GG, or I'm going to double click G to be GG, and then this is going to let me move it across the normals of the mesh. So I'm just going to bring it up to where I want it, and that's good. I'm going to go back to the walls here. I'm going to go to edit mode. I'm going to press Alt and then click the edge to get the whole edge loop, and I'm going to press G, Z to move these up just a little bit higher than this right here. That way I'm going to make the roof of this room part of this object, but I'm not going to do that yet because then we won't really be able to see inside here. I want to put a window here and a window here, and same thing on the other side. So I am now realizing that it is probably better if we mirror this object as well. So I'm actually going to delete half of this and then mirror it back on itself, and then create the spots for our window. So to do that, let's select this object in object mode, press tab to go into edit mode. I'm going to press a new, we're going to press Control R. Control R is going to let me add an edge loop to this object, and I'm going to add an edge loop there, and then we're going to add an edge loop to the other side. If I click again, it will be in the center. Now I'm going to select both of them and scale in the x-axis and press 0 again. And that's going to ensure that it is directly the center of, they're both lined up exactly. Yeah. And then I'm going to press Shift S. Oops, I pressed Shift D. I'm going to press Shift S to get this menu again. I'm going to press cursor to selected. Now the cursor is directly in the center of both these objects. Now I want to change the origin of these walls to be where this cursor is. I'm going to go back into object mode, then I'm going to go up here to object, go down to set origin, and origin to 3D cursor. Now when I set this to mirror, it's going to mirror directly on where this origin is. So let's go back into edit mode. Let's press 3 to go to face select, and we're going to select these 3 faces. I'm going to press X to delete and delete faces. Now I'm going to go to add modifier, add mirror modifier. We're going to change it to, I'm in object mode, so I'm going to press Control A, rotation scale, and we're going to rotate it over the x-axis. And now we need to make sure merge is selected, and every vertice that are within 0.001 meters of each other will merge, and they should be exactly on top of each other based on where we put this origin point, so they should be merging. Now let's make our windows. Let's go into edit mode. We haven't applied this yet, so it's still mirroring. I'm going to press Control R to bring in an edge select. I'm going to press right click, and now I can move this across the normals on the object, and I'm just going to bring it to like right there. I'm going to do that again, Control R, select, and then I'm going to drag this to like here. I'm going to do one horizontally, and then I'm going to bring it to like right here. And I'm going to do that one more time and bring it to like right here. Then I'm going to do it another time and put it like right there. These are going to be my windows, kinda. You'll see. So let's go into face select and let's select both these faces. I want two windows here, and this is where they're going to be. I'm going to press I, and this is going to do this. Inset faces. It's going to inset the faces. But I don't want to inset both of them together like this. I want them to be separate. So I'm going to click it. And then down here we have this little option, and this option comes up for a lot of stuff that we do, and that just like gives you extra tools with things that we're doing. I'm gonna change this for inset faces to individual. So now it just did it on the individual faces, and once we select all of the faces, that menu goes away, which is fine. This works. These are some big weird windows, but it will work for what we're doing. This room's not very grounded in reality at all, which is fine. I'm going to select both these faces, and I'm going to press X faces to delete those faces. So now we have something like this, and because it's mirroring, it should also be the same on the other side. And now I just want to put like some window trims in here. To do that, I'm going to go to edit mode. I'm going to select the edge that I want and press Shift S to get this menu again. Cursor to, that's not what I wanted. Cursor to selected is what I wanted. And then I'm going to go back to object mode, and I'm going to go in here and make one window. Now we're in object mode. I'm going to press Shift A. Let's bring in another plane. We're going to be using the mirror modifier with this as well. So let's change this plane to be the shape of a window. Let's go into edit mode. I'm going to select the whole thing. It's already all selected. I'm going to press S to scale, X to scale on the X axis. I'm going to make it something like that. I'm going to press S to scale, Y to keep it in the Y axis. Then I'm going to press G to move, hit Y to move it in the Y axis. And then I'm going to move it up as well. So G, Z. And now I want this to be thick. I don't want it to be just a boring plane. So we're going to go to modifier, and we're going to do, instead of mirror or array, we're going to use solidify. Basically, this just makes your flat faces solid. We're going to increase the thickness to be something like this, I guess. I'm going to go to edit mode, scale it in the X, and something like this. Something like this would work. Now I also want to mirror this. Let's also go to add modifier. We're going to add another modifier, mirror, and I'm going to mirror it on the Y axis. So now it is mirroring its origin. So now it's showing up on this side. I'm going to press in the mirror modifier, I'm going to press clipping, and basically this is what this does is it allows us, so I'm going to select this edge, press G to move, Y in the Y axis, and it allows it to like lock where the vertices meet. So I can't actually drag this any further this way, and now they're stuck together. And you can see that I can't pull them apart now, which is good. That's exactly what we want. Now I'm going to go to the other side, and I'm going to build out the rest of this window, G, Y, and then I'm going to press E to extrude, X in the X axis, and you can see it looks kind of funny because we don't have this option selected, even thickness. So I'm going to select that, and you can see that it made sure that both sides are even, and it had to like extend the corner here just a little bit to do that. We're going to press GZ to bring it all the way up, and we're just going to make this the shape of our window. We'll press E to extrude, Y to extrude it in the Y axis, bring it all the way over. Because clipping is on, it's gonna stop right there. We did it. We got like this border around where our window's gonna be, which is exactly what we wanted. I am going to add like a little windowsill thing here. I'm gonna select this face. I'm gonna press Shift D to duplicate. I'm gonna press X to duplicate in the X axis, and then I'm gonna press GZ to bring it down a bit, and go into edge select this edge, GY, and I'm going to bring this out just a little bit. and I'm just making it look however I feel like it should look. Now we have this. Now I want to bevel this, but I can't bevel a flat edge because we have modifiers that's actually creating these meshes. So what I can do is I can add a bevel modifier, which will bevel, since it's after the solidify modifier, it will actually bevel that object as it would look after these modifiers are applied. So I'm going to press, right now it's a bit too much. It looks kind of funny. I'm going to, oops, 0 is not enough. I'm just going to change this value until it looks like something that's in my head. Yeah, that looks good. So this basically just bevels every straight edge that doesn't exceed the angle, and that's what it looks like. It looks great. Give it like cross in the middle so it looks more like a, I guess, a cartoonish window. So my cursor is still in the center here, which is perfect. I'm in object mode now. I'm gonna press Shift A. I'm gonna bring in a cube. I'm gonna press Tab to go into edit mode, scale this down, and press GZ to move it. And then I'm gonna press Shift Z till I'm scaling. So I press S to scale, Shift Z to lock it into the X and Y axis. And I'm just gonna make this the size that I want. I think that's good. Press 3 to go to face select, select this face, G to move, Z to lock it to the Z axis. I'm gonna bring it all the way up here. Now you can't see, if I go into wireframe mode, there's a face here and here on this cube. And you can't actually see that because it's in another mesh. So I'm going to select both those faces, press X to delete, and press faces, and get rid of them because we can't see them. I'm actually going to go back into object mode, press F3, go to walk navigation, and walk around here and just kind of get an idea for how this looks. Let's go back into edit mode, select A to select everything. Or press A to select everything. I'm going to press S to scale, Shift Z, and I'm just going to make it a bit thicker. That should be good. Now I'm just going to duplicate this by pressing Shift D. Then I'm going to right click on my mouse to put it back in the same spot. Then I'm going to press R to rotate, and then I'm going to press X to rotate on the X axis. Then I'm going to hold Control to lock it, and I'm just going to rotate it until it's like that. I'm going to make this a bit thicker by pressing scale Shift Y to lock it in the X and Z axis. Scale it, and then I'm going to press S and Y to lock it into the Y axis, and I'm scaling it to be the length of this window. And there we go. We have a window. So we're gonna leave that like that for now. Let's make the the wall trim around here. There's a lot of ways to do this. I'm gonna do it and bring in a whole nother object. So I'm gonna press Shift right click to bring my cursor to this random spot. Press Shift A to bring in another mesh. I'm gonna bring in this plane. Then I'm going to press Tab, go into edit mode. Then I'm going to scale this down to about the size of a wall trim that I want. I'm going to press R to rotate, X to lock it in the X axis, hold Control to lock it to snap, rotate. Then I'm going to press G and Z to bring this up. I'm going to actually make this a bit smaller. Press 3, face select, G to move, Y in the Y axis, and I'm going to go back to object mode. So I'm in object mode. I have this object selected. I'm going to go to solidify. I'm going to press even thickness, so it's even throughout whatever we model here. I'm going to increase the thickness by about that much. I'm going to press G and then Y to move it to this wall here. Then I'm going to go to edit mode, edge select, and I'm going to just start moving these edges to where I want by pressing G to move and then hitting the properly corresponding axis to lock it to that axis. Now I have to press E to extrude, and then I'm going to press Y to lock it to the Y axis. G, Y, G, Y. Now here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to extrude again, lock it to the Y-axis. Now I can't see it. I'm going to press GZ to bring it up. And maybe I'll move it back just a little bit. And you can just extrude this, and I just lock it to the Z-axis and bring it down. I'm going to select both these edges. I'm going to move it to where the stairs, like it covers where the stairs are, so it looks kind of natural. I'm going to select the top part, that top edge only, and then I'm going to press E to extrude, Y to lock in the Y-axis, and then we're just going to continue taking it all the way around. Actually, let's go back. Do it here. Just select this edge, G to move it all the way over here. Extrude again in the Y-axis, bring it all the way this way. Now I want this to be the same on this side as well. So I'm going to select these two edges and that edge, and then I'm going to scale it, press Y to scale it in the Y-axis. I'm going to press 0 to make sure that they are aligned exactly together with each other. And then I'm going to press E, Y, and I'm going to then press G and Z to bring it up here. Y to bring it back, and I'm going to do the same thing with these two. So I've got these edges, S to scale, Y to lock in the Y-axis, 0 to make sure they are the exact same point. And I'm going to take this, extrude on the Z-axis, bring it down, extrude this part on the Y-axis, and then I'm going to do the same thing over here. Select both those edges, scale on the Y-axis, 0 to make sure it's in the same spot. Then I'm going to press F again to fill, and now this goes all the way over there. Now I'm just going to move it on the Y-axis to make sure it hits this wall here. And there we go, we have a wall trim. And now let's do the roof. So let's select these angled walls here. I'm going to go to tab into edit mode. I'm going to select both of these. They should be in the exact same spot anyways. I'm going to press F to fill that, and now we have the roof filled. And then I'm going to press 3 to go to the face select, and then I'm going to select this part here. I'm going to press I for inset, and then how much should I do? E to extrude this, bring this up. I to inset again, and then I'm going to press E to extrude. When you extrude something by pressing E, it automatically locks to whatever direction the face was facing. So I don't have to lock it to the Z-axis for it to be locked to the Z-axis. It just already is. So I just brought that up just a little bit. I'm going to press X to delete and delete this face. And now we have a big hole in the wall, which is fine. I'm going to make this look a bit nicer. So in object mode, I select the roof part again. I'm going to press tab to go to edit mode, and then I'm going to press 2. And then I'm going to press, so I'm in edge select, I'm going to press Alt, and then I'm going to click this edge, and now I have this edge selected. And I'm going to press Shift Alt to select this edge as well. So now I have these edges selected. And then I'm going to press Control B to bevel, and I'm going to make it only one face thick, and that'll just make it a bit nicer. Sweet, so now we have a room. This is basically what I wanted. It's basically done, and I know we haven't duplicated this window, but I haven't done that yet because we need to UV it out, and I'm going to get to that right now. Before I continue, I want to make sure that all the faces in this world are facing the right direction. And what I mean by that is in your game engine, which is Unity, program is not going to render the back parts of these faces. So you'll be able to see this part of the face, but you won't be able to see back here. You'll actually be able to see through it. And we want to make sure that all the parts that the players are all the faces that the players are supposed to see are facing outwards towards the player. And to check that, we can go in Blender. You can see both sides. It lets you see both sides unless you specify otherwise. And so let's double check to make sure that everything is facing the right way. And the way we can do that is we can go up here to the viewpoint overlays and go down here and click on face face orientation. Now you can see that everything that is blue is something that the player can see. Everything that is red is something the player can't see. So when we're actually in the world, everything should look blue. And it does. I did a good job. This is rare, actually. Usually I like fuck something up. But everything looks good. Everything is blue. But let's say something wasn't. Let's say this wall looked like... Let's say the wall looked like that. That means this is going to appear to the player like a big hole in the wall. Even though with face orientation off, it looks fine. But it's red. This face is flipped. And the way we fix it is how I just flipped it. But I'll show you again slower. So basically what you want to do is you want to select, I'm in face select, go into edit mode, select the faces that you need to fix. Go up here to mesh and go down to normals, flip. And now it's facing the right direction. Super useful. Sometimes if you model something and you bring it into Unity and you can see through it all and you don't know why, check your normals using the face orientation tool in Blender. Or we want to add textures to this. And the first thing we need to do is find textures to use. I'm going to show you, this is my folder, the tutorial start to finish folder. This is my folder for my project. This is the Blender file. You better be saving. I am. I'm gonna create a new folder in here and I'm gonna call it textures. Oh, I don't need caps on. Cool. So this is, I'm gonna go to the internet and I'm gonna find some textures to put in this folder. A great website to use is this ambientcg.com, which is also cc0textures.com. There's a lot of awesome stuff here and it's all free, so we're gonna just try to find some things on here to use. So for this environment, I want to use, I want this area over here to be like wood, and then this to be like a carpet, and then the walls can be like a white drywall or something. For this, I'll probably just do like a black border, and then I'm gonna make this part white, but we're not gonna find a texture for that. So let's do that. I have not picked anything out, so I will be choosing something for the first time. Let's start with the wood. Let's find a nice wood texture. These are all seamless textures. So you should be able to throw it on here and I'll show you how to do all that. But let's find a good wood texture. I'm just going to find something and hope it works. And if it looks bad, it looks bad. But if it looks good, it's because I'm amazing. I kind of want something like kind of bright. This. I'm going to bring that over here and we'll download that in a sec. Now let's try to find a carpet. I'm going to... typing in fabric actually might be better, but let's see what's here. What about this? This orange wood floor with this, that, maybe. Let's go with it. So I'm gonna do that. Now for the wall, you could probably find a drywall by just searching drywall, or maybe I might have a better chance doing like plaster. This looks good. Now I'm gonna select this and I'm gonna delete this because we don't need it anymore. It was really there just to help me get the size of the room that I wanted, and I think we got it. I think that's it. I think that's all we needed. These three will be great. So let's download them. So I'm just gonna download the 2K versions of them. I'm gonna go to Documents, mine saved in here. Tutorial start to finish. There's that texture file I created, and I'm just gonna go in here and save all of these. And like I said, I'm saving the JPEG ones because the PNGs are just huge. Now let's go ahead and open these. Let's go to the texture files and we're just gonna extract. I'm gonna extract files here so that they come in their own like folders. And then I'm going to go ahead and delete those. And there's a lot of stuff in here. We only really need like a couple of these, and I'll show you. And they all kind of look like that, right? What we really are going to use is the color one, roughness. If there's a metal, we'll use a metal, roughness, and then normal. That's really what we're going to be using. Now we want to get them on here. I'm going to go over to the shading tab. I don't know if my screencast is going to follow. I don't think it's going to pop up. So I'll just try to remember to tell you what I want. So I like coming into the shading tab because this has my node options and I can UV unwrap in the same thing. Let's start with this object, and this object is going to be the wood floor. So you can see here that instead we've been working in this shade mode. I'm going to press N to get rid of that. We've been working in this shade mode. This is the wireframe mode. This is what we've been modeling in. This is the shaded mode, or like, we've been working in the solid mode. What is this mode called? Material preview. So I'm going to be in material preview. This is the render mode. We have no lights, so it's just going to be dark. So let's stay in the material view for now. By pressing Shift Z, you still go to wireframe, by the way. We're on object mode. I'm going to select the object that I want the wood texture to be on. And now I need to tell Blender that I need to make a material with the wood texture, and then I need to put it on this object. So to make a material for this object, all I'm going to do is select the object in object mode, and then I'm going to go down here to this little ball, which is the materials property, and then up here I'm going to press new. Now this object has a material. There just isn't anything on it. I'm going to change the name of this material to wood, and then I'm going to go into the node editor here. Basically, I'm going to assign textures to this material that is on this object. You can see here by default we have this thing in here, and here we can add textures and assign it to each one of these properties. So let's start with this one. We don't need all this stuff, but as we use stuff, I'll explain as much as I can. So we need the base color. So the base color is going to be just this wood floor color, right? And we need to assign a texture to that. To do that, here I'm going to press Shift A. This is adding something new to this area, which is just like what we were doing in the other thing by pressing Shift A and bringing in like a plane. But now we need to bring in a texture. So I click in here, press Shift A, go down to texture, then I'm going to go to image texture. Now I have this. Now I need to go find this texture that's in my folder and bring it in. I'm going to press open. I'm going to press textures. This is the texture file we made. I'm going to go to wood floor, and I'm going to press the color one. And now I'm going to hit this little yellow thing, drag it all the way to here, and now it is on our object. It looks kind of funny. We'll fix it. But for now, that's pretty good. So now I want to add the other pictures in here that I want. So let's add the roughness map in here. So I'm going to take this node, I'm going to select it, I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate it, bring it over here, press this little folder, and it's going to bring up that same area where this file is. Then I'm going to go to normal GL. Oh no, wait, that's the normal. We're going to go to roughness. And then I'm going to do the same thing, drag it all the way over here, and now it's a shiny wood. Now we need to, I want to bring in the normals. To add a normal, I'm going to grab this, press Shift D to duplicate it again, press this folder, go to normal GL, and then I'm actually going to press Shift A, go down to vector, press normal map, and this is going to help Blender identify this texture as a normal map. And then I'm going to drag this to there, and then I'm going to drag the normal to there. And now we have normals. And normals basically just gives extra details to meshes and basically tells the program how light is supposed to interact with this mesh. That's all I want to add for this. And for now, let's do this object. This object still has a modifier on it. It's still mirroring, which is which we can actually apply that now. That's actually okay. So we're gonna select this mesh. We're gonna go to the modifier, and we're gonna press Shift or Control A to apply, or you can just click this drop down, press apply. Now we can select this whole thing, right? Oh, I'm gonna press W to change my thing. This is the walls, so I want to bring in that drywall texture. onto here. So let's go down to the material properties, press new. So now we added a new material in here that has nothing on it. We're going to change the name to, let's just call it drywall. And then I'm going to go into the node area, Shift A to bring in a new texture, image texture, open, textures, plaster, color. We're going to bring that color to the base color. And now you can see it looks real funny, and that's because we haven't UV'd it out yet, but that's fine. We will get there. I'm just going to make the roughness on this all the way up. This means that it's the hardest roughness. I'm going to bring the specular down so it's not that shiny at all. I'm going to grab this node, press Shift D to duplicate, bring it down. I'm going to press the folder. I'm just going to bring in the normal, Shift A, vector, normal. And we're going to take this normal, tell Blender that it's a normal, and bring it over here. Cool trick with normals, if you put a normal on something and it looks really weird, which this looks very weird for lots of reasons, not just because of this. If you go down here and change it to something like linear, it makes it a bit better. So this is how you add textures to a material in Blender. If you wanted to add a texture to any one of these properties, like a metallic or a specular or any part of this in emission, all you would have to do is exactly what we were doing just with all the other ones. So now let's put the carpet down. So I'm going to select this floor. We're going to do the same thing. Go to the material properties, press new. I'm going to change this to carpet. Then I'm going to go back to the node area, Shift A, texture, image, bring in the image node, put it over there. Press open, carpet, color. I'm going to do the roughness all the way up. Shift D, open, normal, Shift A, vector, normal map. Let's tell Blender that this is a normal. Let's bring that there. And awesome, we have a bunch of textures on here. Let's also add, let's add the color for the trim. Let's do new. I'm just going to call this black because I'm going to make it a dark color. Now I don't have a texture for this, but it is just going to be a plain flat color, so I'm just going to click that. I'm going to go down and I'm just going to also make it the hardest roughness, and now it's black. I'm going to do the same thing for the window, but I already have a black material, so I don't need to do what I just did again. I can just hit this button and I can see all the materials that I've made, and I'm going to press the black one, and there we go. Now the black material is on the window. Let's actually make this stuff look good and UV this out. Let's go to UV editing. Let's go to the material view. And once again, my screencast is not working in this tab, which is fine. I will just remember to tell you everything that I'm doing. Let's start with the walls here. I'm gonna press what is it? It's / on the number pad. If I press / on the number pad, it's going to isolate whatever object I have so that I'm only looking at one object. If we look in this view, so we're in object mode, I have this object selected. I press / on the number pad and everything comes back. / on the number pad again, and it isolates the object. And you can see I selected this object and it automatically brought this picture up. And this picture is the diffuse picture, the color picture for the material that's on here. And Blender just does that. You can change whatever texture is shown here. I could choose this one, and now we see the carpet texture, or I can just press X and I don't see anything, which is what we're gonna do. So basically we need to tell Blender how the texture is applied to the mesh, and the way we do that is we identify edges on the mesh that will allow the program to cut the mesh up and be folded out onto a flat plane. Let's find that plaster color. So this is what the texture looks like, and this is what the mesh looks like on this texture. So everything is squeezed. We're actually not seeing the whole picture here. If I go up here and change it to this view, we can actually see the whole thing. So all we're really seeing is really just seeing like this half here, which is why this looks good. And you can see how it correlates between the two. And basically we need to tell Blender to fold this out so that it looks better. Now this will be folded out pretty easily. I recommend if you want a more in detailed tutorial on UV editing or UV unwrapping, I would go find somewhere else, but I'm just like basically glossing over it, and I'm going to show you how to do it. But if you're still confused later, I recommend finding a better tutorial on UV unwrapping. But basically, we're going to try to unwrap this. I'm going to identify this edge here, so that way the rest of this should be able to fold open flat pretty easily. So I select this edge using the edge select. I'm going to press U, which is the shortcut to the UV mapping tools, and then I'm going to press Mark Seam. So basically I'm telling Blender this is where you can cut and fold the rest of this mesh out. So if I press A, and then, so I select everything, U, and then I'm going to press Unwrap, and it folded out this wall to look like this. And that's pretty good. This is a pretty good unwrap. Now, I'm going to press R to rotate. I'm holding Control to lock it, so that it looks something like that. You can see that this whole wall is like a small part of the texture now, so everything is like super zoomed in on the walls here. I'm going to press / on the numpad again so we can see it in relation to everything else. So yeah, you can see it like this whole wall here is like just this part of the texture. And so we need to scale this whole thing up. So I'm going to press A to select all these faces while we're in edit mode. Then I'm going to put my mouse over on this side to the UV mapping. Actually, I'm going to zoom in, be inside the area here, and then make sure I have everything selected. I'm going to press S to scale, and I'm going to bring these walls and I'm going to scale them out. And I'm going to make it so that now the texture is the wall is much bigger in relation to the texture. So now this looks a bit more realistic in terms of like what a wall might look like. I'm going to scale it up just a bit more. I'm pressing S to scale, and that is starting to look pretty good. Since we're working with the plaster material and the drywall material, I want the roof to be the same material. So I'm actually going to select the roof. We didn't assign a material to this yet. So I'm going to go to the material tab. I'm going to go down here and I'm going to find the drywall material and apply it, and it looks all crazy as expected. And then I'm going to press 2 to go to the edge select, and I'm going to select all these corners here, or I'm pressing Alt to click, and it's going to select the loop cut for me, and then I'm holding Alt Shift to select multiple loop cuts. And then I'm going to do the same thing here, and it's going to wrap around, and I'm going to do the same thing here, and it's going to wrap around. And that way, I believe these cuts are going to, I'm going to press U to give this menu, U, Mark Seam, and I believe identifying these cuts will make it easy for the program to unwrap this. I'm going to select these corners just by pressing Shift and selecting these corners. I'm going to press U. I'm going to press Clear Seam, so now there's only one seam here. And if I press A, U, Unwrap, it does end up unwrapping this quite nicely. Once again, like this part of the mesh is like this small part of the texture, and we want to scale everything up again. So I'm putting my mouse over here. I'm pressing A to select everything, S to scale, and I'm going to just bring this up until it looks fairly similar to the other parts of the wall. That's pretty good, I think. I think that will work. Now, I actually want, there's going to be a big window here, and I actually want this part to be a different color. I'm going to make it the same color as the trim down here. And so to do that, I'm going to go to the in object mode, I have this object selected, the roof. I'm going to go into the material properties, and I want to add another material here. So I'm going to go, I'm going to press this little plus button. Now we have another material here. Now I'm going to drop down and press the black material that I made. And now I want to assign this black material to this part of the mesh. So what I need to do is go into edit mode, and now I need to select the faces that I want the other texture or the other material to be on. To do that, I'm going to select, so if you press L, if you take your mouse, hover over an area, press L, it's going to select every part of that part of the mesh up until the seams. So you can see in the UV area that by doing that, it selected these 3 meshes, and only that, because that's where the seams were. So I'm gonna highlight over, and this only works in face select mode, by the way. I'm gonna hover over each part that I want black, and I'm just gonna press that L button to select everything in that selection, in that seam. Alternatively, I could have also just gone to the UV over here and selected those, making sure that we're on the select. This just says that what you have selected over here, when this is highlighted, what you have selected over here also correlates to what you have selected in the seam. So now that I have all the faces that I want selected, I'm gonna go back into the material option. I'm still in edit mode. I'm gonna select the material I want, and I'm gonna press this assign button. And now those parts are using this black material like I wanted. Let's do the carpet now. So I'm in object mode, I'm selecting the carpet, and then I'm gonna press tab to go into edit mode. I'm gonna go over to the UV over here. I'm just gonna clear out the texture I have up. I'm gonna select the whole object. I'm gonna press A to do that while I'm over here, or it doesn't really matter which window you're hovering over. But I'm gonna hover my mouse over this, over the UV window, and then I'm gonna press S to scale, and I'm just gonna scale this up. Or I'm gonna press U and press unwrap to unwrap it first. Then I'm gonna press S to scale, and I'm gonna scale this up to be, and I'm gonna move it around so that by pressing G, and so that it looks fairly center, and I think that looks pretty good. Now let's go to the wood. I'm going to, in object mode, I'm going to select the wood. I'm going to press tab to go into edit mode, and I'm going to press / on the numpad again to isolate the object so I can see it a bit better. Now this object is pretty split up pretty well already, and if I just select everything and press U unwrap, it should work already by default, and it does, but things look a bit weird, right? So like, not only are things scaled all wrong, some things are rotated in a way where it looks weird. So if I press A to select everything and S to scale, the wood doesn't look uniform, because like the wood's not supposed to go this way on these steps, it's supposed to go the other way. So to fix that, everything UV'd properly. But to fix that, we're going to go over into the UV area. I'm going to select the faces that are rotated the wrong way. I'm going to press R to rotate, hold down Control to snap to that 15-degree angle, and then I'm going to rotate it until it looks how I want it to look. I'm going to press A to select everything again, and I'm going to continue scaling this until I'm happy. This still looks kind of wrong, doesn't it? I'm going to go into object mode. I'm going to press Control A, rotation and scale, and then I'm going to go back into edit mode, press A to select everything, U, and I'm going to unwrap this to see if it looks a bit better. Something looks off to me, and I just cannot tell what it is. So if you look here, things are stretched weird. See, this should not look more like a square like it does. It should look more rectangle like this. Ah, I see. So what's happening is, the texture I'm using is not a square texture. So it's scaling to the texture, but in that square format that we were looking at, it was scaling wrong, which was very confusing, but it is supposed to look like this. So I'm gonna grab this. Once again, to move things around, I'm just pressing G, and then I'm pressing like R to rotate, and I am just dragging, selecting with this tool. If you press W, like I said at the beginning, you can rotate between the tools. And then I'm just pressing S to scale, and I'm scaling this up until it looks kind of how I want it to look. Bring it up a little bit more. Scale. Awesome. So I actually want to add the plaster material to this as well. So I'm going to go back over here. We're in object mode. Got the object selected. I'm going to press this plus button, and I'm going to come down to the drywall material, and then I'm going to go into edit mode. Face select by pressing 3. I'm going to select this, hold shift, and select all the faces that I want, and then I'm going to go and select the material I want and press assign. And so now it looks something like that. And now I am happy with this. I'm going to press / on the number pad and go back here. And now this is what this scene looks like. So let's go to this window. The reason why I didn't want to UV, or I didn't want to duplicate this window yet, because since there's going to be 4 of them, I wanted to UV unwrap them first and then duplicate them. That way it'd essentially be less work, or it would be less work than having to UV unwrap 4. But with this window, it's just a plain colored texture, so there's not much that we have to do to this. First thing we should do is apply all these modifiers. Now there are multiple modifiers on this object, and to make sure that everything looks good as we go through this, we want to make sure that we apply each one in the order that they are in. So we're going to press Control-A to apply these. I'm going to hover my mouse on top of the modifier I want to apply, Control-A, Control-A, and Control-A. And now all of these are applied. So I could go through this and like, oh, it looks, so one thing that the solidify modifier does is it makes faces on all points. So when you apply the solidifier modifier, it's going to create these faces, and in the center where the object was mirroring, and we're going to want to delete those. So I'm in wireframe mode by pressing Shift-Z. I'm just selecting, holding Shift, selecting the faces that I want. I'm going to press X and then press faces to delete those. And so now they're gone, and that's all we wanted. So I could go through this and I could UV this out and make it perfect and look good. I could press 2 to go to edge select, hold Alt, and select all the edges that I want, press U, mark seam, and I could do that on this whole window, but I'm not going to, because there's an easier way. Since this is just using a solid color, I'm going to press, in edit mode, I'm just going to select everything. I'm going to press U. Instead of just pressing unwrap, I'm going to press Smart UV Unwrap. And this is going to split the object up based on an angle limit. By default, it's 66 degrees. That's fine with me. I'm going to press OK. We get something that looks kind of like that, which is fine. We already applied the black material to it, and it looks great. Now we have this center part that, once again, I didn't join these together because the other object had modifiers to it, but now that it doesn't, we can go ahead and join these together. So if I select the cross object first, and then I select the window object, and then I press Control-J to join, it's going to apply everything that's on the window. It's going on the object that you selected last. It's going to apply that on the object that is joined with it. And so since we had the black material already applied on this, it automatically went on this on the other object. So now let's go ahead and duplicate this manually all the way around. So let's go back to the modeling option. I'm going to go to the material viewpoint. We're going to duplicate this window and get it around this whole place. So I'm going to select this object. I'm actually going to go into edit mode. If I press Shift-D while in object mode, it's going to duplicate the object, and now we have multiple objects. But I'm actually yeah, that's fine. Shift-D in object mode. I'm going to press X to lock to or Y to lock to the Y axis. I'm going to bring it around this way. I'm going to press 7 on the number pad. Actually, I'm going to select both of these. So I have this one selected. I'm going to hold Shift. I'm going to select this one, press 7 on the number pad, press Shift-Z to see the wireframe mode, press Shift-D to duplicate, X to lock to the X axis. I'm going to rotate this window by pressing R. And then I don't have to lock it to an axis because we're looking at it from above directly down, so it's automatically locking to an axis. And I'm just going to hold Control and rotate this 180 degrees. Press Shift-Z to go back to the colored mode. Press G to move, X to the X axis, and I'm just going to move it in place. Now I have these two windows selected. I'm going to go to these windows. I'm going to press that one, and I'm going to hold Shift to press that one, and I'm going to press Control-J. And now they're all one object. Awesome, we're almost done with the base of the world. Now let's go ahead and create the windows. So I'm gonna press Shift, right click to bring the cursor right there. I'm gonna Shift A, go to Mesh, bring in a plane, press R, lock to the Y axis, hold Control. I'm gonna rotate till it's straight like that. Then I'm going to go into edit mode. I'm going to scale this down. And then I'm just going to press G and then lock it to the right axis and move it in place from G, Z to bring it up. 2 to go to edge select, select the top edge, G, lock it to the Z axis, bring it up. Then I'm going to go to face select this face. I'm going to press Shift D and Y to lock to the Y axis. I'm going to move it to this window. Select both of them using the face select. That's pressing 3 and clicking this button. Hold Shift D, press X to lock to the X axis, bring it across. Shift X, bring it across. And I'm just gonna, if I'm holding Shift to make the movement a bit slower, and I'm gonna just put it in place right there. And holding, I'm just gonna select one of the faces with the face select tool, press Shift D to duplicate. I press Shift Z to lock it to the Y and X axis. I'm going to move it to the center. I'm going to press R and lock it to the Y axis and rotate it. And then I'm going to press I'm going to press G to move, Z to lock it to the X axis, S to scale, Shift Z to lock it to the X and Y axis. And I'm going to scale this to be pretty big. And I'm going to scale this in the Y direction, and then I'm going to select the whole top part and press Y. Still need to move it in the right spot. Then I'm going to press G, lock it to the Z axis, bring it up. And now you should have something like this. Now, I intentionally, when making this, screwed up the normals on this. So if I go to viewpoint overlays and go to face orientation, you can see that there are some red spots now. So if we were to bring this over into Unity with the red facing this direction, and I tried to put a glass material on here, you actually wouldn't see the glass material. It would just be like a hole in the wall. So we're going to make sure we have this object selected. We're going to go into edit mode, press 3 to select the face. We're actually in object mode. Go into edit mode, press 3 to select face select. I'm going to select each one of the red faces. And then I'm going to go to Mesh, Normals, Flip. And so now they are right. So I'm going to go to Viewpoint Overlays and turn this face orientation off. And now we need to make a glass material. So I'm sure once I go to shading, my screencast keys will break again, but that's fine. We're almost done here. So let's go to shading. And I have the window object selected. I'm going to press New. And you can see it created a new material here. We're going to go and press, or call this glass. Now I need to make this, I need Blender to know that you're going to be able to see through this mesh. So I need, in the material properties, I need to scroll down. And if your options look different, it's because your render engine is different. So if you go to the camera and make sure you're in the Eevee render engine, this should look the same. So if you can't find the options I'm talking about, double check that you are in the Eevee render engine. So go to the material properties, go all the way down to blend mode, and we're going to change it to alpha blend. Now, if you go to the node editor and you look at these options here, you go all the way down to alpha, you can actually now change the alpha here and be able to see through it. And that's what we want. Now it looks like a window. To make it a little bit more like a window, I'm going to bring the metallic up a bit. I'm going to bring the roughness down a bit because windows are pretty smooth. And then I'm going to change the base color to like a dark color. This is not going to translate when you export this over to Unity. It's kind of just so it looks nice in Blender. So cool. I'm going to select this object here and I'm going to delete it. And I'm going to start joining some of these objects together in Blender. So I'm going to take the trim here, and I'm going to select the wall, and I'm going to press Ctrl J to join those two objects together. And I'm going to keep the windows separate, and I'm going to take the stairs and the carpet, and I'm going to press Ctrl J to join those together. This just makes things a bit easier. Also, this will cut down on draw calls in Unity because there'll be less objects for the game to draw, even though for this specific example, there's not going to be a lot of objects anyway, so it's not really a big deal. But usually when I do bigger worlds, I like to join objects together to help bring down the draw call count. And you want to do it in a way where the player isn't rendering too much. So like if you just joined all these objects together in a giant world, it's going to be too much on the player, because now the player is, even though they're rendering one object, they're going to be rendering everything in the world. So you want to do it what's called, so there's something called occlusion culling in worlds. I don't know why I'm going into detail about this. It isn't that important right now. But basically I like to do it so if the player is seeing certain things, and they're always going to be seeing those certain things all at once, those things I like to join together, basically. So for this, though, I'm actually going to join the ceiling to the walls as well. So I'm just selecting objects that I think make sense to be together, basically, and pressing Control-J to join them together. So now we can go to that empty object we created and press X, delete it, because we don't need it. That should be good. This space is basically done. The space is big. Okay. Let's export this out and move this over to Blender, or to Unity. So I'm gonna go to my folder here. I'm gonna create a new folder here, and I'm gonna call it FBX. And that's where we're going to save this file at. We have our base of the world. I'm gonna go to File, Export, FBX, and I'm gonna go to the FBX file. I'm just gonna hit Mesh so that we're only exporting the mesh. And then I'm going to just press Export FBX. And now the base of the world is an FBX in our folder over here. Awesome, cool. Now, time to go to Unity. So before we go to Unity, I just want to talk about how VRChat works. To get a world up into VRChat, you need to make sure you have to use Unity, because that's the game engine the game runs on. You need to use the version of Unity that VRChat uses. So if you go to VRChat's website and you log in and you're on your account, if you click setting up the SDK, it's going to bring you to this page. The reason why I'm showing you this is because you can get the current Unity version from here by pressing this. And this right now, VRChat uses Unity 2019.4.31. So that's the one you need to make sure you download. Following the directions they have up on here, you can learn how to download Unity. I'm not going to go over that. I already have this downloaded, but to get the world up in VRChat, you need the VRChat SDK. We are going to be using VRChat SDK 3, which is the Udon SDK. It's the one you should use, because there is another one, but they don't use that anymore. So make sure you download this. I already have it downloaded, so I will not worry about that right now. So let's open up your Unity hub and let's create a new project. Create a new project with Unity 2019.4.31. I'm going to call this tutorial start to finish, and I'm going to find a spot to save this at, and I'm going to save it tutorial start to finish. And I'm just going to select it here. Actually, I'm going to go back, VRChat, tutorial, start to finish. I'm going to create a new folder, call it Unity. And yeah, great. So now Unity will start up. Okay, so Unity is now up. The first thing you want to do, and the first thing I always do, is import the SDK. So this is where I saved the SDK at. I downloaded it from the website. This is the most recent one. All you're going to do is double click it, and it will start importing into your project. This will take a second, so let it do its thing, and we'll come back or I'll skip to when it's done. Let's go import. So yeah, just let it do its thing, and it will be done. It'll take like a few minutes or something. Okay, so the SDK has imported. So SDK 3 uses Udon. I'm not a programmer. I don't know how to do Udon, but there are tools that make things really easy. So like if you go somewhere like on Booth, there's a bunch of like Udon prefabs in here that people put up for sale that makes it easy for you to do basically anything. You can find prefabs and throw them in here. Booth Booth.pm is just a really good resource to go to if you want VRChat related stuff. I'm going to be using something called CyanTriggers by CyanLaser. Basically, this lets you use the old SDK2 trigger system in SDK3. It makes things really easy. If you're going to download my project, you're going to have to download this separately anyways, but I'm going to be using their tool, and I will show you. I think I'm not going to do a lot with it. I'm going to like toggle a couple game objects and that's it. But it makes things so much easier, and I highly recommend using CyanTriggers. I use it in all my worlds. So, well, now I use it in all my worlds. So I will link this below if you want it, and I'm going to import that into the project right now. So I actually have it saved in my assets folder. It'll come in as a zip file like this. I'm just going to extract files here. And then this comes in as a Unity package, and I'm just going to double click it just like I did the SDK, and then it's going to come in, and I'm just going to let that import, and this may also take a few minutes, so just let this do its thing. So it's done. It's much quicker than than it took the SDK. So I'm actually going to go down here, I'm going to right click, press create folder, and I'm going to just make up a new folder called SGB tutorial. And I'm going to throw everything for our project in this folder. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to go to that FBX folder that I found, or that I made, and this is where we exported the base of the world disk. We exported this to an FBX file here, and we're going to drag that into the scene in just a moment. I'm going to create some folders in here. You can organize your project however you want, but this is usually how I organize my projects. I usually make an FBX folder. Well, for now, we're just going to make an FBX folder. We're going to create a texture folder for textures. And then, so the scene that we're in, the default scene is put in a folder called scenes. This is like the only folder that exists when you start a new Unity project. And that's this scene. I'm just going to rename this. Actually, I'm going to drag this. I'm going to put it into that folder I made and rename it. I'm just going to call it tutorial scene. Reload. Let's open up this FBX folder that we made. I'm going to take, this is the FBX file that we exported from Blender. I'm just going to drag that in here, and now we have this. I'm going to go into the scene. I'm going to create an empty game object. I'm going to call it meshes, and I'm going to take this and I'm going to drag it into the scene, and I'm going to put it under the meshes thing. And I made this not for any other reason but to just be a bit organized in the hierarchy. So this is just where I'm going to put like every furniture and all the meshes that we bring into here. Here's what we made in Blender. There's no materials on it, and like I said from the outside, since those faces were red, you can see right through them. And this is what we made, and it looks pretty good, I think. There's no textures on it because we haven't brought any textures into Unity yet. Okay, so I'm recording this after I finished the tutorial because I realized that I think I forgot to mention like basic movements in Unity, so I just wanted to go over that really quickly. So to move around in Unity, if you press the right click button on your mouse, you can get this little eye icon, and you can rotate your camera around the scene. And you can see up here on the left, there's a bunch of movement tools too. So when I do that, you can see the eye up there as well. If I use my scroll wheel, I can zoom in and out. If I use shift and middle mouse button, just like in Blender, I can move around the scene. And then I'm hitting that right mouse click and I'm rotating the camera. If I grab something, by default, I think it's the arrow movements. If I press W, I can get that. If I press E, I get the rotate tool and I can rotate objects. If I press R, I get the scale tool and I can scale objects. Control Z obviously undoes it. If I press W, once again, I can move this and move it around. You have these options up here, which is center and local. Local is local to the object, so you can see that as I rotate this, the cursor kind of goes with it. If I press global, it goes back to always pointing in the direction of the Y, X, and Z axis in Unity, which is a bit different than Blender for some reason. The Z axis is like horizontal. And if I do pivot will go to wherever the origin of the object is. And remember, origin of the object is like where that dot is in Blender. So if we go to Blender, you can, like this dot for the floor object, that is the origin. But if you hit center, it's going to go to the center of the object. So that's just basic movements in Unity. I wanted to make sure I said that before I continued on with the tutorial so that nobody's like confused when I start like moving things around. One thing I also like to do is press WASD. If I right click and I'm in the eyedropper and I press WASD, I can fly around the scene. And if I use my scroll wheel while holding the right left click, or the right mouse click, the right mouse click, and I scroll, it will change the speed of me flying around using WASD. And there's also camera tools up here, so you can see there's like options and stuff. I go up here sometimes and I'll like turn this on and off, and I only do that because Unity is stupid and it like freezes for me every once in a while, and that's how I fix the camera issue. It's dumb. Okay, that's all I got. So let's go ahead and create the materials in Unity. So one thing that people message me a lot, and they're like confused that their materials aren't coming in Unity. And Unity usually tries to create meshes based on how they are in the FBX, but sometimes it doesn't work, and it never is reliable. So no matter what, I always bring in my textures separately. So let's go back to let's find our textures folder, and I'm gonna create 3 folders in Unity. I'm gonna just call them the same as the folders so they correspond with our textures that we have. So that we had carpet, drywall, and wood. And so we just want to drag those. We want to drag those textures in and add them to our scene. So I'm only going to drag in the color. I'm going to hold control, by the way, and then select the ones I want. So I'm going to bring in color, normal, GL, and I don't need the roughness for this one. So I'm just going to bring the color and normal for that one. For the drywall, we're going to go to plaster. I'm going to bring in the color and normal for that one. I don't need anything else for this one either. These are real simple. For the wood, I'm going to bring in the roughness as well. So I'm going to do color, normal, GL, and roughness. And so now let's start making these materials. So let's start with I'm going to go back to textures. Let's start with the black material. So I'm just going to right click, go to create material. I'm going to call it black. And then I'm going to make the smoothness all the way down. This is just the default standard shader. If you want to use something else, there's a whole bunch of stuff here, but we're just going to be using the default standard. We want it opaque and we want it like black. I'm not going to go completely black. I'm just going to get pretty close. I'm just going to drag this on the parts of the meshes that are supposed to be this material. So there we go. We got our first material on there. Now let's do the carpet. So I'm going to right click, create material, and then we're going to drag this over, bring the smoothness all the way down. I'm going to bring the normal in here. And now we get prompted. Basically, for every normals, you need to tell the program that this is a normal. And you can do that by selecting the texture, going here, pressing normal map, and pressing apply. Or if you drag it into the normal slot, it's going to prompt you and ask if you want to do that. And if you press fix now, it will automatically do that. Now we have this carpet material. I'm going to take it and I'm going to drag it onto the floor. I'm thinking that maybe the material is a bit too big. Like if I go back to Blender, if I go to UV editing and I select this, go into edit mode, select just the carpet part, go over to the UV and scale it a bit more. That might be a bit better. Once again, I only have the carpet. See, now the wood and the carpet are joined together because we joined them together. You can see in the material slot that they're all there. I am going to scale up the carpet. It looks kind of weird to me in Unity. So we're going to do that. Now we need to export this again to update. So if you go to File, Export FBX, make sure it's on Mesh. I'm actually going to find the FBX folder in the Unity project. So if I go to the folder that is, so if I go to Documents, VRChat Worlds, Tutorial, Unity, this is the Unity project, and I'm going to go to Assets, SGB Tutorial, FBX. I'm going to save it here and overwrite it in Unity, and it should update the FBX in the project. So I just exported it, and you can see that the UV is updated in the project. And since we brought in all the textures, now you can see Unity trying to match the textures on the materials that Blender had. We still need to update this. It's still not good. I think this carpet looks a lot better now. Now let's go to drywall. We're gonna right-click, create, material. We're gonna call it drywall. And I'm just going to drag both of these over, fix now. I'm going to bring the smoothness all the way down, ignore. And then I'm going to drag this on the parts where the drywall is supposed to be. And there we go. Now we're going to go to textures, go to the wood, do the same thing for the wood. Wood, let's drag that over. Drag the normal over, fix now. So now we also have a roughness, but we don't have a roughness spot. There is a shader that allows a roughness, and that's Autodesk Interactive. I like to use it a lot. It's basically the exact same as the standard material, except that there's a roughness slot. And so I'm going to drag the roughness into there and move this to where it needs to be. So this is a bit shiny for me. So I'm actually going to right click on the roughness. The roughness basically tells the program, I'm going to press show in Explorer, it tells the program how rough an object is supposed to be. And since this is a bit too shiny for me, I'm actually going to open this in GIMP and edit it just a little bit. All I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Colors, Exposure, and I'm going to bring up the white value. And the more white it is, the more rough it's going to be. So I'm going to press Control-Shift-E to export this. And I'm just going to export it with the same file name, because that way it'll just overwrite it in Unity. And if I bring that down, click in Unity, that looks a bit better to me. Awesome. So now we have all of our textures and materials on the base part. Oh, we haven't made the glass yet, so let's create that. Let's go to Create, Material, Glass, and we're going to change this from opaque to transparent. We're going to go to the alpha, bring it down. I'm going to make it very dark. I like to bring the metallic up just a little bit on glass materials, and then I'm going to bring the smoothness up pretty high because the glass is pretty smooth. And you can see that Unity tried to create the window material already, the glass material. So I'm just going to put it on top of that. It looks like there's a hole, but there's a glass material there. I swear you can kind of see me as I go through it. Here's the base of the world, basically. Let's go ahead and bring in furniture. So I modeled some furniture that I prepared for this project, and this will be linked below as well, along with everything else that I'm using in my assets folder. And this will, like I said, this will be linked below. I have a Unity package called SGB Meshes, and this is a variety of furniture from worlds that I sell, things I offer on my Patreon. It's actually, most of these are, there's not a lot in here, but most of these are from this Sketchfab page. So I just went ahead, put it in Unity, and now I'm going to double click that and import it into my scene. So that just imported. What I imported was this folder right here called SGB Mesh, or SGB Meshes. If I go in here, there's a couple things in here. The important one is this prefabs folder. In here, there are a variety of things that I'm going to add to this world. Like I said, this is linked below. When you're making worlds, you can use assets from anywhere. So, so like I said, Sketchfab is a good resource, and this is Sketchfab. Booth is a good resource as well. There's a lot of stuff in here on this website as well. You could also go up here to the asset store and you can search for certain things. You have to be careful though, especially from the asset store, if you import things that come with scripts. It could interfere with the VRChat SDK, and you're going to end up having issues trying to upload. If you do have compiler errors, I'm not going to go into how to fix those right now, but I do have a video about fixing things like that, which that will be linked below if you ever run the issues you'll run into is like you can't upload, or the SDK isn't working for you, and things like that. But you can come here and type in like anything really, furniture, and there's a ton of stuff here. If you can change it to for price low to high, so you can find free stuff. So there's a lot of places you can find assets. These assets are assets I made, and in my tutorial I just wanted to show things that I made. So we're going to use these, and the way you work with these is basically you just drag them into the scene. And that came in a weird spot, and I'll tell you why. It's because we have no collision in this world. So let's add collision. In Unity, you need to tell the program what players are allowed, or what players are able to interact with and collide with. If you don't tell that the player is not supposed to fall through the floor, then the player is going to fall through the floor. And the way you do that is you select the mesh you want. So we're going to select the floor here, and we're going to go to Add Component, and I'm going to add a Mesh Collider. A Mesh Collider is just going to make a collider based on what the mesh looks like. I'm going to do the same thing to the walls here. Mesh Collider, it's already selected. Select that. And for the glass, we're going to hit Mesh Collider as well. And so now the player will collide with all of these parts of the wall. So now if I go here and I want to drag something in, the prefab, the model that I actually brought in, is actually also colliding. So that way it's not just like going to some random spot in space. So we're going to move this into a spot where I like. That looks pretty good. I'm going to move that and put it into the meshes part to keep everything organized. I'm going to bring this in. If I hold Control, it also locks in Unity. And I'm just going to rotate it a bit so that it's not perfect. And I'm just bringing these meshes in to put them in the random spots. I'm going to make sure everything goes under this mesh game object just so that it all looks nice. And so yeah, these meshes actually have, you can see they have, like on this couch, you can see this green outline. This is a box collider. The way you add those, it's just another collision, just like the mesh collider on the walls. You just press Add Component, and I search box collider. You can put colliders on these. The beanbag chairs don't have them though. So yeah, that's adding objects. So now let's start to make this scene look kind of how we want. It's very bright in here. This is not how I want the scene to look. I actually want it to be pretty dark, and I want it to look like a basic VRChat world. I just want it to be dark at night with a mirror. Okay, so if you look, the reason why it's dark, even though that there's walls, well, there's a big window at the top, but we have this sun object, and the sun is a real-time light. Well, it's a mixed light. If you look over here in mode, it's a mixed light, but basically that means it's also real-time, and real-time aren't affected by back faces. If you bake lights, lights will then be affected by back face. What is light baking? Baking lights is basically saving the light data in the scene so that players don't have to render what the lights should look like live. You should do that beforehand. If you want to learn, I'm not going to go too into detail into baking lights. I'm just going to kind of make this look how I want it to look, and you can follow along. If you want to learn more about light baking, I have another tutorial for that, which I will also link in the description below. For this though, this is very bright, and I don't like it being very bright. And I do like it being warm. I'm gonna go ahead and start changing this. So this is the sun, the directional light. I'm gonna make this like 0.5 or something like that. And I'm gonna just leave it for there for now. I'm gonna go lighting, and I want to make sure that generate lighting is off because I don't like it being on. I'm gonna keep soft shadows on as well, and I'm gonna organize this a bit. I'm gonna create a new empty. I'm gonna press F2 to rename. I'm gonna call it lights, and then I'm gonna grab the directional light and put it under here. And all my lights and everything related to lights, I'm gonna just put under this empty game object. So I made it darker, but the outside is still very bright and blue. I'm gonna take this SGB or the SGB meshes, which is what we imported that had the furniture, and I'm gonna bring it over to SGB tutorial. That way everything is kind of in the same same area. I'm gonna go to our textures, and I'm gonna create a new folder, and I'm gonna call this skybox. And I actually have something to use for a skybox. So this is a star image that I have. This is an image I had commissioned, and so basically this is gonna act as the skybox to the world. And I'm just gonna drag this image in here. Once again, this is gonna be part of the package linked below that you can download if you want to use it. So to create a material that is the skybox, I'm going to right click, go to create material, and I'm going to call this skybox. So this is just the normal material right now. We're going to go up to shader, go down to skybox, and there's a bunch of stuff here. Procedural is kind of like, you can see it looks like the Unity skybox, and that's exactly what it is. So I just grabbed the skybox, dragged it on, and brought it over here. And if I start messing with these values, you can see that things kind of change. And this is the procedural skybox is a good one. I use it sometimes. I'm not going to use it here, but I just wanted to show it to you. So let's go back to shader, go down to skybox. I'm going to use panoramic. I'm going to take this and I'm going to drag it onto the spherical HDR. And now you can see that it's very bright out there. I'm going to bring up the exposure just a little bit. Now we have a skybox and it's stars and it looks kind of okay. So this image is really big. It's a 70 megabyte file. But if you look here, you go over here, you can see that it's only 1.3 megabytes. And that's because when images are brought into Unity, they are compressed automatically to this 2K size, which is usually more than enough, or it's usually good for most things. We're going to talk about this stuff in a little bit later on when I get into compression. But for now, I want to make this skybox look a bit better. So I'm going to make it 4K, and I'm going to turn on crunch compression just so that the 4K file isn't that large. I'll get into compression more later, but since we're going to be increasing the resolution of this image, I did want to just go ahead and use compression, and that's going to be all the compression that I'm going to be putting on here. 50 is fine. I'm going to press apply, and this should, since we're upscaling it to 4K, make it look a bit better, and it totally does. Let's add more lights. So because this directional light is real time at the moment, lights are not baked, it's passing through our walls, and it's kind of making it look bad, which is just fine for now, but it won't be doing that after we bake. Well, we're going to add more lights, but first I want to go to the lighting tab and change my settings just a little bit. For the environmental lighting, instead of using skybox is good. Sometimes I like to do that, but my skybox is pretty dark, so I'm going to go to gradient instead, and I'm going to adjust these to where they're also dark, but I think the gradient gives me just like a bit more control that I prefer. For the reflections, we're going to put a reflection probe in here, and we're going to make it custom. I do want to use real-time GI, and I'll tell you why later. And for the light mapping settings, I always like to use Enlighten. I think it gives really good results. It is going away, which I think is really sad because I always get really bad results with progressive. For now, let's use Enlighten. It works in the Unity version that VRChat uses, so I'm going to keep using it. I'm going to adjust these settings just a bit. I'm going to use 2K light map size. You can change all this stuff to whatever you prefer. These are usually the settings that I like to use. So yeah, that works for now. I'm going to use point lights to simulate the lights from these lamps. So I'm going to go to the lights game object I made. I'm going to go to lights, add point light, and the light comes in, usually white. These are the default settings. I want this to be baked, so I'm going to change the mode to baked, and then I'm going to change it to be like a warm tone. I don't need it to be 10, maybe 4. I'm going to add soft shadows, and I think this light's a bit big. I'm going to bring that down. And I'm going to try to put it in the center here. And that should work. So I'm going to duplicate this. Important thing is, I press Control D to duplicate, and I'm just going to bring it over here. The important thing is to know, and a lot of people get confused by this, especially new people, changing this to baked does not mean your lights are baked. It just means that these lights are able to be baked, and they should bake when you bake, but you need to bake for it to bake. So yeah. If you want baked lights, change your lights to baked, but they're not baked until you bake. The way you bake is you go to lighting and you actually press generate lighting. We will do that when we're ready to bake, but we're not ready to bake. We have 2 point lights. Point lights are pretty straightforward. They add lights and they look like that. Spotlights are also straightforward. I'm not going to put any in here, but spotlights add a spotlight. Let's add a reflection probe. Reflection probe, basically, wherever this circle sphere is at is where the reflection is going to come from. And this box around here, I'm going to press this to adjust this box, basically tells the game what objects that the reflection is going to interact with. And so I'm just going to make this the size of the room, and that should be good. When this bakes, we'll be able to grab the cube map that it produces into this environment reflections. I'm going to go back to furniture because I didn't bring in any books. These books are just to add a bit more detail in the scene. Awesome, books. So going back to lights, now we need to add something called light probe groups. So basically, once you bake lights in your scene, the lights are going to be like burned onto your objects. It's going to be basically like a texture laid over everything. And you kind of also, like, you need to save that data in the air as well. So players need to know, or the game needs to know where light is coming from to hit the players. And it's not being rendered in the scene automatically. It needs to be saved in the scene beforehand, and that's what light probes are for. It's to basically say each one of these dots is going to be a point in space that the light data is going to be saved at. So if a player is near this dot, it's going to take the lights from that dot and project it onto the player as if the light is actually there. But after we bake, the lights won't be there. To change this, just bring in a group, move it around. I'm going to press this thing, and now I can grab and select these dots. I'm pressing Control D to duplicate. I'm gonna press select all, and I'm just gonna bring these everywhere. I'm just pressing Control D once again, and I'm just dragging this, and I'm putting them all over the place because I want them to be all over the place. I want light data to be saved for these players in the scene. This is what's going to make it so that players can see themselves in the mirror. That's basically it for lights. Now we have to bake it. There is one more thing I want to do. So I mentioned I want real-time lighting. And real-time lighting GI basically means that it can save data from, it'll save data from lights that are changing. And I'm going to do the VRChat thing where I'm going to go to create 3D object cube. People like to put emissives on like cubes and stuff and throw them all over the scene, and that's what I'm going to do. Let's go back to the SGB tutorial, go back to our textures. I'm going to right click, create material, and I'm going to call this emissive. And I'm going to go into the inspector, I'm going to go to emission, I'm going to make sure that this is set to real time, and I'm going to make it like an orange color. And I'm going to take this material, oh that's a bit too orange. There we go. I just want it to be like warm. And I'm going to take that, I'm going to put it on this cube. And I'm putting this cube under the light game object just because they're acting as lights. And this will only work if real-time GI is on. And it'll take the light data from these cubes and put them all over the place. And these cubes are a bit large. I'm gonna make this the large one, make this the small one. And I'm just gonna bring these all around. So after we bake, this should look pretty good. It may fuck up though. Shit always fucks up. So I'm just, once again, Control D is duplicating these objects, and I'm just moving them all over the place. And that should be enough. So let's go ahead and bake this and see how everything looks. So let's go to lighting, and we're gonna go all the way down here. We're gonna make sure real-time GI is turned on. And then we are going to press generate lighting. And now we just wait, and this could take a long time. It didn't take a long time at all, and I'll tell you why. I'm gonna cancel that. So things aren't baking on here, and my Unity just like went real quick there because everything needs, for lights to bake onto something, the objects need to be static, which is basically telling the program that these objects aren't going to move. These meshes are already static from my the furniture that I brought in, because that's how they were brought in. But the base of the world is not. So we are going to select the parent object to all the objects in the base of the world, and we're going to press static. And we're going to press yes, change children. So now all of these are static objects, meaning that lights can actually bake onto these. So now we should be able to bake lights. So let's go to lighting, generate lighting. And now we wait, and you can see at the bottom here that it is going. And so now we just wait, and we'll come back when it's all done. So this baked, but I made another mistake. So if you look over here, it doesn't look good, right? And the reason for that is because we didn't create any normals for the light map. So basically, as I mentioned, that the light map, when you bake lights, the light data is like mapped over all the meshes, almost like another texture. But you need to make sure that the UVs for the light map specifically are configured in a way to where that it can actually do that. And the reason why we get such poor results is because it is not configured in a way to do that. So what we need to do is we need to find the FBX files for the meshes that are screwing up. The furniture looks fine. That's because the furniture is already set up properly, but the base of the world that we made in Blender is not. So what we want to do is find the FBX file, go over into the inspector, go down to generate light map UVs, click that, press apply, and the game would fix. It will fix itself. It'll create light map UVs for it. Depending on how big the mesh is that you're using will determine on how long it actually takes to load to do that. This is a pretty small mesh. There's not a lot of vertices here or triangles. So it was instant. So we're going to go back to lighting and we're going to generate once again, and hopefully we'll get a better results. Okay, so the lights have finished baking and it looks pretty good. You can see that there's, from the directional light, you have this big square coming from the roof here, which isn't bad. I might change that a little bit. And you can see that the real time on these look pretty good. If you go to the emission, since it is real time, you can now like change this. It could be like any color you want. So that's what that does. Let's make it, blue is fine. Yeah, the only thing I really want to change is the directional light. I think it's way too bright still. I'm going to do like 0.1. Oh, you can see that it's still changing because it's real time. It's mixed. I never changed it to bake. So let's change it to bake. And this is actually really helpful because now I can see what it's going to look like. Like, I do want like a little bit. And honestly, these point lights are probably a bit too bright. So let's do like 0.6 or something and maybe bring down the intensity or the range to like 3.6. So yeah, I mean with lighting, so baking lights is really annoying because you have to like wait for it to bake, and for like bigger environments it can take a very long time. Here it's not taking, it was taking my computer like a minute or so. So not a very long time at all, but when messing with lights and baking lights, it's just a matter of like playing with it and trying to get somewhere that you like. Since the lights are baked, if you go to where your scene is, your program is going to make another folder. It's named the same thing as the scene, and in there is where your light maps are. And this is also where the cube map for the reflection probe is, and we can drag that into our environment reflections, and now everything will have reflections. But this reflection probe gets everything already, so that's not really that big of a difference. But regardless, we made some changes, so let's go ahead and generate lighting again. Here you can actually see where or how much memory our baked lights are taking up, which I will show you how to compress everything after we do this. Okay, lights are baked, everything looks good. We're gonna go with this and move on. So now I want to move on to compression, and one thing that adds to world file size is the biggest culprit is textures usually. So if you go to textures, you can see that this texture is 2.7 megabytes, and that's, you know, if you're trying to make a 20 megabyte world or something, 2.7, like that's like 10% of the world almost, right? Or it's a bit more if you're trying to hit 20 megabytes. But so what you want to do is you want to compress these files, and you want to compress all these files as much as possible, so that way the size of your world is as small as possible. So what we're going to do is we're going to spend some time and we're going to go through all the textures and we're going to compress them. By doing that, how to do that is you find the textures you want, you select them. I just press shift to select both of these, and I'm going to go over here and I'm going to change it's different for every texture, right? You don't want to compress some textures, and other textures you want to compress more than others. For these, I'm just going to bring them down to like 1K and use crunch compression. Crunch compression, I don't really know what it does, but it takes down your file size quite a bit, so I always press it. And then you hit apply, and now if I select this, I can see instead of 2.7 megabytes, it is 147 kilobytes, which is way better. So we're going to go through here, and I'm going to just compress all these textures. Hopefully it's going to bring down the size of this world quite a bit. Skybox, we already messed with the skybox. We made it 4K and then compressed it, and it's 0.8 megabytes, as you can see. If we go to wood, we can go here. We're going to bring it down to 1K. And now let's not forget all of our furniture. The furniture came in as prefabs, but when you bring in prefabs from other places, they may not compress textures for you. I did, so these are already compressed. The last thing you want to check is your light map. So like I said, when you bake lights, the game is going to create the folder that is named the same as your scene. Go into that folder. You can find your light maps, select them, and you can compress them. They're just like any other texture, and you can compress them. So I'm just going to bring them down to 1K, and there was like there wasn't even really a change in the scene. So it all looks very, very good. Everything's compressed, so this should be a very small world. So that's compression. Do it. Another performance thing is occlusion. So I talked about occlusion a little bit earlier. Basically, the way occlusion works is if your player, it basically only renders the things that the player can see. So if the player is looking at something, it renders it, and everything else, it doesn't render. It's not really a big deal in this world because there's like 4 things in here, but it can help with performance a lot, especially in bigger worlds. So to bake occlusion, all you have to do is go to Window, Rendering. This is where the lighting is too. Go to Occlusion Culling. We already have it up. Go to Bake. Here are some settings. You can mess with those. If you're like having things flash in and out, it basically either means you need to bake again, or your smallest occluder and smallest hole settings are probably off. So just start to mess with those, and hopefully things will be better. But that's the explanation of occlusion culling you're going to get from me. So just press bake, and it should be good. And you can see that it's showing wherever the camera is pointed to. Where is the camera? The camera is pointed. It's out here, and you can see what it's seeing. So when I bring the camera in, you can see things popping in and out. And that's basically what occlusion does. Occlusion is baked. Everything is great. That kind of rhymed. Okay. Awesome. Now let's add some music. I downloaded a song from, it's this file right here. It's called First Stream. I downloaded it from the YouTube royalty-free Creative Commons library. So it's probably really loud. So yeah, I'm gonna put that in here. So I'm gonna create a folder. I'm gonna call it audio. And I'm gonna bring this in here, and it's gonna load. And you can compress this as well. So if I click this, you can see there's a quality button here. I'm gonna make this loop, so I'm gonna put it on streaming. Someone told me a long time ago that that's better for looping audio in VRChat, so I've done it every time. I don't know if it was true. So yeah, so I just brought the quality down just a little bit. I'm gonna press apply. Sometimes I bring this down way, like a lot, and no one ever complains about it, so I'm sure it's fine. And I'm gonna grab this. This is the audio file I just grabbed in, and I'm gonna pull it. I'm gonna pull it in right there, and now it is in the scene. So this is the song. It creates a game object for it. If we go over here, we can see the audio settings. For VRChat, you're gonna want to bring in something called VRC Spatial Audio Source. This is really only important for 3D sounds, but this is not going to be a 3D sound. But this is important. Hi, so this is a voiceover. I just wanted to come in and say I kind of screwed up here. You don't actually need the VRC spatial audio source for 2D audio sources. If you do put it on and you keep enabled spatialization checked, it's going to turn your 3D audio source, or it's going to turn your 2D audio source into a 3D audio source, which is what you don't want. You'll probably get a warning. If you don't put it on, you'll probably get a warning in the SDK saying that audio sources don't have it. And it does definitely help for 3D audio sources, but for this, it probably isn't important. And at the very least, if you do put it on, make sure you uncheck enable spatialization. Like I said, otherwise it's going to turn your 2D audio source into a 3D audio source. So in this project specifically, it's not very important, but and I go through the rest of this tutorial with it on, and I don't realize it in the world until after the fact. So I just want to let you know that I would turn off enable spatialization on the spatial audio source script. So some things we want it to play automatically when players load in here, and we want it to loop. 2D, we want it 2D. So 2D is basically meaning it's going to be kind of playing in both ears. 3D means it's going to be very much wherever it is in space. But 2D, it will keep it uniform no matter where the player is at. So we're going to keep it on 2D. Volume of 1 is very loud. I've learned, especially for 2D audio. I like to do like 0.1 or 0.2. So we're going to do 0.2. And that's it. Now the thing will loop. It's 2D audio, and it will be, it won't like be super loud, and it'll be good. So now the only thing we have to do now is the VRChat script stuff. What I want to do is we need the player to load in. I want to add a menu so that the player can turn off this audio sound, and I want to add a mirror with an on and off button so players can turn it on and off. So the first thing we're going to do is add the spawn. So if we go to assets and we go down to, let's go to VRChat examples, we're going to go to prefabs, and now there's a bunch of stuff in here. The spawn is a game object, is a prefab called VRC world. So you're going to find this VRC world prefab in the VRChat examples prefabs folder, grab it, drag it into wherever you want the players to spawn. When players spawn in, they're going to be facing the direction of the blue axis. If you go to see which direction the blue is pointing to on that game object, you're going to want to make sure that this is set to local. And this is where the player direction is going to be. There's some settings in here like respawn height. We're just going to change that to 20. So 20 meters down below the spawn limit, the player will respawn. We are going to mess with the reference camera right now. So if you go to main camera, what I like to do is I like to change this clipping plane to 0.001, or 0.01 is the smallest. Basically, this allows small avatars to not have like clipping in their hands and stuff. And so change the main camera to that, and then let's tell VRChat to reference that camera. So we just drag the main camera into the reference camera. This is kind of also the step for post-processing, which I'm not going to show you here. I have a tutorial on post-processing that I will link below if you want to do post-processing. But for here, it's not important, but you would put post-processing stuff on here, and it would only work in VRChat if you reference the camera. Pipeline Manager, this is where when you upload to your account, you'll get a blueprint here, and that would be like the serial code for your VRChat world. If I were to give you a world that I uploaded and you try to upload it on your account, it would stop you because it would have the same blueprint ID. And there's a way to get rid of it, but when you have it, you can just detach it and create a new one. So that's the only real important stuff there. Oh wait, and then the stuff. This is like your walk speed, run speed, strafe speed, jump speed. I'm just gonna leave it all on default. It's a small world. There's not a lot going on in here. Let's create a UI menu. I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna right click, go to create empty. I'm gonna press F2 and rename this to UI. Then I'm gonna right click and I'm going to go to UI and press text, and now it made this huge thing. This is going to be the UI setting. This is going to be the menu setting for the world, right? So to build this out, we're going to make it work and actually work with VRChat, we got to do a couple things. So go to the canvas, go over here in the inspector. We're going to change this from screen space to world space. And then we are going to go up here and change the settings. I'd like to make this 1,000 by 1,000. And then we're going to scale it by 1,000th. And then we are going to put it in position 1 or 0, 0, 0. So now it is right here, right at 0, 0, 0. Now we need to add a VRC UI shape. This will allow players to actually be able to interact with it. And I'm going to put it on the default layer. Press yes, change children. So if it's set on the UI layer, the player won't be able to interact with it because the UI layer in VRChat is the UI layer of all of VRChat's UI, which in world, players won't be able to interact with. But if you put it on the default layer, players will be able to interact with it. So now that we have that, players should be able to interact with this menu. So now let's go ahead and change this text. I'm going to call this menu. You can see that it's really small there. I just changed the width and the height to be 800 by 200. 150 is probably good. We're going to change the font size to 150. It's a bit too big, apparently. I'm going to change the alignment, and you can mess with this and make it whatever you want. So this is the menu. I'm going to go to Canvas, and we're going to add a button. And this is when we're going to start getting into CyanTriggers. So go to UI, go to button, and we're going to change the width to be like 800 and height to like 80 or 150. That looks good. And then if you go to this drop down, go to text, we can change it, and we're going to say BG music toggle. And we're going to bring this up so that players can actually read it. And I'm just going to select this canvas, and we're going to move it somewhere to where I want it. I'm going to press E to rotate. Press W for the move tools. You can see the border of this goes out when it interacts with the wall, so I'm going to try to make sure that I get it as close as I can without it clipping. Press R to scale, and I'm going to scale this down. W to go back to the move tool, bring this down. And yeah, let's go back to the button. So now we need to make this button work. To do that, we need to add something to tell the game that it's going to be clicked, or to tell it to do something when it's clicked. So we're going to press add. We're going to drag itself in, and this is when we get into CyanTriggers. So we're going to add component, and I'm going to type in CyanTrigger. And since we imported CyanTriggers earlier, it is in there. So the reason we dragged the button game object itself into this is basically because we need this button to reference a component that is on this, which is CyanTriggers. So let's go into the triggers and actually get this thing to work. So we're going to press add event, and we're going to do custom. When you're using a UI menu, you have to use custom, because the way that the UI menu references the custom event, or the event that needs to happen, is by knowing this phrase right here. So whatever is in here, so it can be anything. So I'm just going to put click. It doesn't even need that underscore. That underscore helps stop clients from using it, as far as I understand it. So I'm just going to make it click. Actually, I'll just do like BGM or something. And so when it clicks, the button knows to reference itself, and what we want it to reference is something in the udon behavior. We're going to go all the way down to send custom event string, and what we're going to put here is whatever the name of this event is. We're going to paste that right there. So now when you click this button, it's going to hit this event, which right now nothing happens. So let's make something happen in here. We're going to press SDK2. We're going to put toggle, or game object active. Do that again. Game object toggle. Yeah, toggle active. And we're going to bring in a game object for it to toggle. And the game object we're going to bring in is the song file, which is this, the first streams. And we're going to just drag this in here, and that should toggle it. And that's it. So now when you play and you come in here and you click this button, it should toggle the song on and off. CyanTriggers is really useful. It's really easy compared to Udon. Udon is, as far as I understand, it's like based. It's very similar to C#, or it uses C#. I don't know programming, and I tried to learn, and it's annoying and not fun, so I don't. CyanTriggers is great. There's a lot of like old SDK2 tutorials this basically is SDK2. It's a bit different, but ultimately it uses the same ideas, and it's basically the same process. It's super simple. Highly recommend it. So yeah, now let's make some mirrors. I'm going to create a new game object, and I'm going to type in mirrors. I spelled it wrong, I think. Yeah. And then I'm going to right click. So if in the VRChat examples folder in prefabs is a VRC mirror object. Drag that into your scene, and you have a mirror. We're going to press R, and we're going to scale this to be like as big as this wall, almost. And then I'm going to drag this all the way up to the wall. And let's look at the settings here in the inspector. What we want to look at is this reflect layers. So this is all, the layers we're seeing here are the default layers in Unity. This is not the default VRChat layers. And to do this properly, we need the default VRChat layer. So what we're going to do is we're going to go all the way up to the VRChat SDK. We're going to go to Show Control Panel, and then here you will see this. You're going to want to sign in under your account. So once you're signed in, go to Builder, and you're going to want to press this button, and you can't upload until you do this. So this is why it's like error. So press Setup Layers for VRChat, do it. Setup Collision Matrix, do it. And now, if you go to Layers up here, you can see there's a whole bunch of layers here. And if you go to the Reflect Layers, you can see that all these layers are here now. The reflect layers are the layers that you're saying that the mirror is allowed to reflect. Right now, by default, everything is on, but we don't want everything on. We just want some things on. So I'm going to, just to organize this, I'm going to bring this down to the mirror. And this is going to be my high quality mirror. I'm going to press nothing to begin with. I want it to reflect the player, so I'm going to press player. And then you need to have mirror reflection on. So right now, all it's doing is reflecting the player in mirror reflection. Most of these objects are on the default layer, so I'm going to press default. So now it's reflecting everything. And if I had pickup objects, I would want that as well. So I'm going to just turn on pickup objects, even though I'm not adding pickup objects. Now we have a high quality mirror. I'm going to press F2 to rename this. And I'm just going to put HQ at the front. Now I'm going to press Control D to duplicate it. Press F2 to rename, and I'm going to make this the low quality mirror. Now all I need to do is go to the reflect layers, turn off pickup, and turn off default. And now there are two mirrors on top of each other, flashing on top of each other. I'm going to turn them both off. Actually, no, I'm going to turn them both on. I'm going to go to this UI canvas, and I'm going to press Control D to duplicate it. And I'm going to bring it over here, and this is going to be the same. That way I don't have to make the UI menu again. And once again, I'm going to try to get it up to against the wall. You can see the white outline. It gets a bit dimmer. If you play the scene, I'll just show you. Let's play the scene. For some reason, when Unity starts, UI menus are able to be seen and rendered through walls and stuff. But after you play the scene, now it doesn't. It's really stupid. I don't understand why it does that. So yeah, let's mess with this UI menu to make it work with these mirrors. I'm going to select this text, and I'm just going to delete it because I don't need it. For this first button, I'm going to call it, or the button's fine. I'm going to go to text, and I'm going to change it. I'm going to call it HQ mirror. And for the button, everything should work. I know the name, we'll call it mirror button. And I need to copy this and make sure it matches up here as well. Instead of this, actually I'm just going to delete this. So basically we need to set up triggers so that it turns on one mirror and makes sure the other mirror is off. For the HQ mirror, we're going to press SDK2. Since the event is already created, since we duplicated it from the other thing, we're going to type in game object, set active. Then we're going to grab the, this is the HQ mirror. This is the one that turns the high quality mirror on. I'm going to check this so that it's set to true. So when this is clicked, the high quality mirror gets turned on. Now we need to add another set active, game object set active, and drag in the low quality mirror. And we're not going to check this button. Instead, we're going to keep it so it's false. So now when you click this button, the high quality mirror gets turned on and the low quality mirror gets turned off. And now we're going to duplicate this button by pressing Control D, bring it down. I'm going to go to the text, change this from high quality to low quality. And we're going to switch these around. So instead of the high quality turning on, it's going to be the low quality. Oops. And instead of the low quality being turned off, it's going to be the high quality that gets turned off. So now when you hit the low quality button, the high quality mirror gets turned off and the low quality mirror gets turned on. And that's how you do it with CyanTriggers. These should work. I guess we will figure it out. The last thing I want to show you with CyanTriggers is how to add a sound effect with the button. So we're going to go back to our audio folder. So right now just the background music is in there. We're going to go to assets. I have this button wave file that I'm going to use. And basically what we're going to do is when the player hits the button to turn on, this sound effect is going to go off. So the button's not like just this boring button. It'll be kind of cool. So I'm going to bring that in, and I'm going to bring this over here. I'm going to drag this in just like we did on the old button. Just for organization's sake, I'm going to bring it into the UI. Let's go over to the inspector. I do not want this to play on awake. I want this to play when I want it to play. I'm going to change this to 0.2. Like I said, 2D sound effects at like 1 is very loud. We're going to keep it around 0.2. And I'm not going to add the VRC audio component. I'm also going to turn off these mirrors because they're annoying. Going back to the button sound effect. This should be fine for what it's going to be. I'm going to select the one of my buttons, and I'm going to add another SDK2 trigger. I'm going to press audio source.play, and we're going to play this button. We're just going to drag it in. And we're going to do that for each one of these. Go to SDK2. I'm going to type in play, audio source.play, and drag it in. And then we're going to do the same thing for this one. Type in play, audio source. And now when you hit these buttons, they should play. And this button sound effect should not loop. It only plays when I want it to play. And that's it. This is a VRChat world for sure. So now we're going to upload this, test it, make sure it works. I actually don't often use the game object toggle, so I'm hoping it does what I want it to do. So I guess we're going to test, and we're going to see if it does. To upload a world to VRChat, all you have to do is you go here, VRChat show control panel. We're in the control panel. We go to builder, and we press build and publish for Windows. To upload to Android, don't use this button. Every time I've used this button, it's always failed me. I will show you how to do that once we make sure that the world is working. So I'm going to actually open up Steam and get VRChat running. If I turn up my desktop audio, you can hear the music playing. After you press build and upload, after it loads, you'll get to an image like this in the game window in Unity. So this is where you can title your world. I'm going to call it Epic VRChat World. I'm going to make sure you can hear me and turn down this audio in the background. If you want to make your world public, you would press this button, but I don't want to make this public. So I'm just going to leave that. You can see that the image of your world is going to show up here. To change that, you can go to Scene, go to your VRC cam, and you can drag this around, press E to rotate. You can just put this anywhere you want. And now you can see it correlates over in this screen as well. And to upload it, you just press upload. And then you wait. So when this is done, we'll run around in VRChat, and I will show you what it looks like in game, and we'll make sure that everything works, and then I'll show you how to upload for Quest as well. So here we are in VRChat. We're in the home world. After you upload, you'll see this content successfully uploaded. That's a good sign. So if I go to worlds and I scroll down and I go to mine, you can see the world that you just uploaded. It's ended up being 14 megabytes. That's pretty good. And I'm going to press go, and we can go there and check it out. And here we are. If I go here, that should have toggled it off. And it's playing. Let me turn up my audio on. hear. I want to make sure you can hear it too. It's really quiet. It is playing. It is pretty quiet. I can hear it fine, but I don't know if OBS is picking it up. It looks like it may not be picking it up, but it is definitely playing, so that works, and that's good. Let's run over to the mirror. If I hit that, and I don't know if you can hear the audio from the buttons coming on, but these also work. Everything works. That's so cool. So this is the world. So if you want this on Quest, the one thing I did notice is that you can't turn off the mirrors once you turn them on. So that's not really a big deal for this world, but let me show you how to fix that. Let's go to the buttons, and we're actually going to delete that. We're gonna press STK2, go to toggle, and then we're gonna go to game object toggle active. And I'm just gonna, it's fine if it's there. Go to mirrors, and since this is the HQ button, we're gonna drag in the HQ one. And then same thing for the low quality. We're gonna take this and we're gonna delete it. I'm gonna right click delete, STK2, toggle. That way these buttons, they don't just turn on the mirrors, they actually toggle them. But they'll always turn off the other mirror, and that should work fine. Save that, and I'm going to upload this real quick again. Show control panel, builder, build and publish. I'm going to upload this again, same process, and I'm going to just double check that it does work in game. So here we are in game. Let's check this. Awesome. So the mirrors work a bit better now. Cool. Okay, so let me show you how to upload this to Quest. So I'm not going to go into great detail on how to upload to Quest. I'm just going to kind of show you how to do it. There are some things you need to know with Quest. Some things don't work. If you're having issues like so a lot could go wrong. For one thing, you don't want real-time lighting on Android, and you don't want, there are some things that aren't compatible with Quest builds. So if you're using a shader you could be using something that works fine on PC but crashes you on Quest, and usually it's because of real-time lighting or of a shader. And in my experience, when people ask me questions, it usually comes down to a shader or an object that is just not compatible with Android. I'm not going to go into detail with that. I'm just going to kind of show you how to do it. So to upload to Quest, what you want to do is go to build settings file, build settings, and then you'll get something like this. So by default, you're on PC. What you want to do is go to Android. If you don't have this build of Unity in, it'll be like grayed out like these ones are, and then it'll ask you if you want to download them, and just go through the process of downloading them. But once you have it downloaded, you can click Android and press switch platform, and then Unity will do its thing, and it'll switch you. It's going to take a second for it to load, but it'll switch you to the Android build. And once it does that, I will take you through the rest of the process. Okay, so Unity just finished the switch, and if you look around, you can see all these like funny red and green spots, and it looks really gross. The reason that's happening is because of the compression settings on the light maps. So we're going to want to go to the light map. So let's go to SGB tutorial. Let's go find that folder that's named the same as the scene that the game engine made. You're going to want to select these. And so let's go over to the inspector after you select all the light maps. And right now we're on default. What we want to do is go and find the Android settings. Let's double click for this because we're going to want these settings to change specifically for the Quest upload. We're going to keep everything the same except for the format. We're going to change this to compressed ASTC 4x4 block. What this does, I have absolutely no idea, but it fixes it, so do that. So now this looks much better, which is good. So now if we go to the VRC world game object, you can see now since we've uploaded the world, we have this blueprint ID. If you upload, while your game engine is on Android and you upload to, if you upload to VRChat using the same blueprint ID, which we will because we're not going to change it, it will become the Quest version of of the PC equivalent. It will be the Quest version of your world, right? I was just showing you this to kind of explain how it works. So it means that you can upload literally anything to your Quest version of your world. It doesn't have to be a copy of your world. It can literally be anything you want as long as it follows the same blueprint ID. So yeah, that's basically the concepts behind Android. So we are going to go ahead and upload it again. It's the same exact process. Go up to the VRChat SDK, go to Show Control Panel. We're going to go down to Builder, Build and Publish for Android. It did say Windows, now it says for Android. We're going to click that button, and we're going to let this load. It's using the same blueprint ID, so everything should be fine. We should see the same image for the world that we do for Quest. Make sure I turn on the audio. So now we are here for the Quest version. Everything's the exact same. You can see it's every time you go to upload a world, it's gonna keep the last photo that you had for the world. So unless I hit upload image, I won't have to go back here and change the VRC cam again. It should be the exact same. So everything's the same. I'm just going to press this. Once again, if you want the world public, you press this, but I don't want the world to be public. So I'm just going to go ahead and press upload. And that's it. That is, that's the tutorial. The world's done. I hope you found this useful. If you have any questions, you can leave a comment below. I will respond, or you can find my Discord, which is also below, and you can just ask me directly. Yeah, I think if you want this or anything else that I talked about in here, all the links and downloads for stuff is below, and if I miss anything, just let me know, which I wrote it all down, so I shouldn't. If you want this world, it is also below, and you can just download what I made here, and it's free, and you can upload it. You can make it public, you can do whatever you want, just don't resell it. And that's it. I think that's all I got. All right, bye.